Good morning.
Morning.
It is delightful to see you this morning for the August regular meeting of the Kentucky Board of Education. As we begin this morning, I do want to take a moment, as did Vice Chair Robinson yesterday, to recognize the extreme challenges that our fellow Kentuckians in the eastern part of the state face this morning as they continue to pick up the pieces from the catastrophic flooding that took place nearly a week ago. Earlier this week, as you heard Dr. Robinson say yesterday, the Department of Ed held the first virtual superintendent's huddle for those superintendents in affected areas. And as Dr. Glass and the team did for our Western Kentucky victims of the tornado, this gives the agency a chance to hear firsthand how we might best support the immediate short-term and long-term needs of our districts as they engage in recovery. As you've probably seen reports, and I certainly have been in touch via text with several in the region, our school districts are assessing damages to buildings and facilities, community infrastructure, restoration and cleaning requirements in affected buildings, and the community's recovery status in general. I've seen lots and lots of heroic school leaders, educators across the region who are caring for their fellow community members as they have been feeding people in need, housing people in need, and just jumping in with the regular cleanup that ensues. Other districts provide shelter, feeding sites, and cooling spots, and as the immediate needs of food, shelter, and clothing are identified, they're now working to restore power and to help begin thinking about what return to school this fall might look like. As we know, there has been tremendous loss, and it's going to be a very tough start to the 2022-23 school year for many of our schools and families. So on behalf of the Kentucky Board of Education, as this word goes out, please know that our thoughts and prayers are with our Eastern Kentucky school districts and families, and that we, as the Board of Education and your Department of Education, stand beside you through this long process of recovery. And at this time, I also want to add my welcome to Jude and Joanna, who joined the meeting yesterday with all fervor. I was able to listen in, and I was so excited to hear those two bright new voices in our conversations at our first work session meeting yesterday, and then today, your first official meeting. At this point, I'll ask Dr. Brewer to please call roll.
Joanne Adams.
Here.
Holly Bloodworth.
Here.
Patrice McCreary.
Here.
Sharon Robinson.
Here.
Lee Todd.
Here.
Steve Trimble.
Here.
Lou Young.
Here.
Joanna Stevens.
Here.
Jude Dela.
Here.
Aaron Thompson.
Here.
Hey, Chair, you do have a quorum.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Last comment I would make about having had the privilege of listening in yesterday. Dr. Robinson and I were talking momentarily about the United We Learn effort and the leadership that Dr. Glass and the team showed as we all get up to speed about what we are engaging in as a Commonwealth around the importance of this bright new future of learning in Kentucky. And I just want to remind us all, this is not an initiative. This is not a Dr. Glass thing. This is not a momentary effort. It really is looking at building a rigorous, deep pathway to learning for every learner in Kentucky, and I'm certainly excited about what the future holds there. And so yesterday, being able to bask in that a bit was excellent, so thank you. At this time, the first item on our agenda is the minutes of our June 8th, 2022 regular meeting, Operations Committee, and the Curriculum Instruction and Assessment Committee, the July 19 KBE Portrait of a Learner Subcommittee meeting, and July 28th KBE Awards Committee meeting. These minutes were all distributed to you in advance. Do we have any corrections to any of these minutes? If not, do we have a motion to approve these minutes?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Todd. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Bloodworth. On that motion and second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the requirement that we elect a chairperson at the first regular meeting of each fiscal year. Therefore, at this time, we will take nominations from the floor and proceed with the election of a Kentucky Board of Education chair, and following that, vice chair. Nominations are now in order.
I'd like to nominate Dr. Lou Young as Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Trimble.
Can I make double nomination, Dr. Sharon Robinson as Vice Chair?
Okay, can we take them together like a slate there, Todd, or should we separate that?
I would recommend that you separate them.
Okay. All right, thank you so much, Mr. Trimble. I really appreciate that, and I would very much appreciate the opportunity to serve one last term. Any other nominations, however, I promise I would yield the floor.
I second the motion if it needs a second.
Thank you so much, Dr. Todd. On that motion and second, we do have a slate nominating Lou Young as chair of the Kentucky Board of Education. No further nominations at this time. All those in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All right, thank you. Thank you. That's a sitting ovation. Well, thank you. Just as a moment of privilege, it is an honor to be able to do this work, especially with those of you around this table. I can't think of a better team to be leading this work in Kentucky at this time, so thank you very much. I am excited about that, and then we need to have serious conversations this year about what we will do the next time around, so I'm excited about that. At this time, I'm open for a motion for vice chair.
Chair Young,
Yes.
I'd like to make the motion that we nominate Sharon Porter Robinson as our vice chair. May I speak to the nomination?
Yes, please.
I see no reason to change up our dynamic duo. You all have done a stellar job and your leadership is appreciated, so I'm happy to make that nomination.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Any further nominations? Hearing none, do we have a second?
Second?
Thank you, Dr. Todd. On that motion and second for Dr. Robinson to serve as vice chair, any further discussion? All those in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All right, excellent. Thank you. We're getting kind of used to each other. All right, the next item is always fun, and at this point, I'll turn it back over to Mrs. McCrary with the awards committee regarding the recipient of the 2022 Kelly Award for Business and Education Partnerships.
Thank you, Chair Young. As always, this is an enjoyable part of our session because we get to share the individuals and the groups who shine across the Commonwealth, and there are many, as we've seen through the many applications we've had for these awards. This is the Award for Business and Education Partnership, the Joseph W. Kelly Award for Business and Education Partnership. Joseph W. Kelly served as a member of the Kentucky Board of Education from 1989 until 1998 and provided exceptional leadership as its chair for 7 years. He was a strong leader in the fundamental early years of implementing Kentucky's nationally recognized school improvement efforts. A respected business leader and education advocate, Kelly knew firsthand the critical role the business community plays in supporting Kentucky's public education system. His career exemplifies the significant contributions that members of the business community are making in support of Kentucky students. This award is given in the fall of each year to a Kentucky business person or business who has partnered with a public school or district to provide outstanding leadership that promotes school improvement and student success. Criteria for the award include creating or sustaining strategic partnership between a business and school or district that leads to improved student outcomes, including but not limited to post-secondary success and workforce outcomes, and significant contribution to a school or a district that leads or will likely lead to increased or improved educational opportunities or improved educational post-secondary or workforce outcomes for students. And as I stated earlier, we had a number of applicants for this award. They were all stellar and such a shining spot for our Commonwealth. On behalf of the awards committee, I would like to share that the committee met this past Thursday, July 28th, and determined that candidate 7 best met the criteria of the award. Therefore, I would like to move approval of candidate 7 as the recipient of the 2022 Kelly Award for Business and Education Partnership, and ask the chair for the board's approval to recognize candidate 7 at the board's upcoming October regular meeting.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Patrice. And thanks to Jude, who joined our committee this time, replacing Soliana very ably. It was a great meeting and a great slate of nominees indeed. Patrice's motion coming out of committee does not require a second, but do we have any further discussion? All those in favor of number 7, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All right, the next item on our agenda is the KBE regular meeting calendar. You have the full list in your portal. You'll note that the new or revised meeting dates are included there in red, and we are moving forward with our 2-day split format to see if that makes travel a little bit more palatable and the job a little bit less grueling as we work through these this next couple of years of meeting agendas. Any questions or comments about this before we open for a motion? All right, many thanks to Meredith and team for the slate of dates here. Those in favor of approving this new calendar, please, nope, I need a motion.
I make that motion. Approve
Thank you,
this
Mr.
calendar.
Trimble. We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Bloodworth. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the KBE meeting calendar, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. The next item is appointment of KBE members to serve on the State Evaluations Appeals Panel for the 22-23 fiscal year. Many thanks to Dr. Todd, Ms. Bloodworth, and Dr. Robinson for having served on that panel for the last 2 years. Dr. Robinson has asked to be replaced. Mrs. Bloodworth, would you be willing to serve again?
Yes.
Thank you. And Dr. Todd has agreed to serve again. Mr. Trimble has kindly agreed to serve on the panel. So I do have a slate to present to you today of Bloodworth, Todd, and Trimble. Anyone else interested, though, I bet they won't fight you for it. Hearing none, do we have such a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that we appoint Steve Trimble, Holly Bloodworth, and Lee Todd to the Evaluation Appeals Panel.
Excellent. Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ms. McCreary. Any further discussion? Just of note, especially to our two new members, these meetings take place once or twice a year on the heels of a regularly scheduled meeting. So, but it is an important task, and we appreciate your efforts. All those in favor of these 3 appointees, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you again. We appreciate your service. The next item is membership renewal for the National Association of State Boards of Education. This group's acronym is often referred to as NASB. It is time for the board to consider renewal of membership with NASB for the upcoming year. Provided in the portal is a document providing NASB outlined membership benefits, as well as an invoice that shows the annual cost of NASB. I would just add on a personal note that I've had the opportunity to engage with NASB many times throughout the course of my time on the board and have found them to be an extremely professional group, and the materials and resources as well as the meetings, synchronous meetings, have been extremely beneficial to me as a new State Board of Education meeting. So I am particularly fond of our association with NASB and the resources that they provide. I know that Ms. Bloodworth, Ms. Batt, Dr. Robinson, Ms. McCrary, Ms. Sloan, several of you have been engaged with NASB over the years. I don't want to belabor it, but if anyone would like to add anything about their NASB experience, this would be a good time to do that.
Well, Jude is participating.
Oh, and Jude's
in the
starting now, too.
student- in
That's
the
right.
Student Collaborative. I would add that I do believe we get a lot of benefits. I think we can perhaps do a better job of making fellow board members aware of some of these benefits. There is a newsletter that comes out from time to time that looks at state policy developments, and I'll talk to Meredith about how we can share that with everybody, because it gives you perspective. First of all, you know you're not dealing with this, whatever it might be, by yourself. Second, there is perhaps there are insights into solutions and approaches that have been taken in other states. And there are many ways that fellow board members can be involved with NASB. So I find that the service component of it is quite comprehensive, to the point that I don't think I've ever been to a professional meeting where the voice of students was more prominently and respectfully engaged in a substantive way, which was, it's like, okay, this is what we're teaching them, to how we're enhancing their sense of citizenship and responsibility. So it's been very fulfilling.
Excellent. And Jude, I might put you on the spot. In that same spirit of student engagement and student voice, I know they've asked you to participate in a new work group.
It's a student engagement collaborative where we will ultimately have a policy brief that we make with our mentors. So.
Excellent. And Dr. Robinson is going to be Jude's mentor, so I can't wait to see that, some kind of policy brief or white paper around student voice and perhaps service at the state level at the board. So excellent. I can't think of a better opportunity for us to showcase our new Jude. Thank you. All right. Without further ado, then, I will at this time entertain a motion to approve membership to the National Association of State Boards of Education for the 22-23 school year.
I make a motion.
Thank you, Ms. Bloodworth. Do we have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. On that motion and second, any further discussion? All those in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you. On the heels of that, it is time for us to consider the first in-person National Association of State Boards of Education annual conference. This year, it's taking place on October 26th through the 28th. We don't have to know today who would specifically be interested, but I would ask you to take a look at your calendar. But in order to approve the travel in advance, it would be my recommendation that we allow up to 5 state board members to attend this conference, which will be in Phoenix at that time. So that would be my recommendation. I'm open to other possibilities. And any questions that you might have, we may not know the answer right away, but Meredith can certainly dig that up. Do we have such a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Todd. On a motion by Dr. Todd to send up to 5 state board members to the annual conference, do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Trimble. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Be thinking about that, and feel free to go ahead and reach out to me and/or Meredith to get your name on the list for that. If we were to find out that there was an unusual amount of interest, then we will come back together and decide democratically who will be able to participate. At this point, everybody's favorite moment in the board meeting is our good news time, so I will turn it over. I believe, Ms. McCrary, you're first up.
It is my absolute pleasure to share this good news. Brings back very many good memories, as a matter of fact. Kentucky Department of Education and Valvoline Incorporated is a very, Valvoline is a very important partner in our Kentucky Teacher of the Year program. The selection of 24 outstanding Kentucky educators have been named recipients of the 2023 Valvoline Teacher Achievement Awards. That's something to be celebrated because of the outstanding educators that we have across the Commonwealth. And these teachers are now in the process of competing for the 2023 Kentucky Teacher of the Year Award. That's going to be announced in September. And September 20th, All 24 will be honored during a ceremony in Frankfurt, and the Kentucky Teacher of the Year will be announced at that time. Also, the elementary, middle school, and high school Teacher of the Year will be announced, and from that group, the Kentucky Teacher of the Year is named. The 2023 Kentucky Teacher of the Year will represent the state in the National Teacher of the Year competition. All 24 Valvoline Teacher Award winners receive a cash award. In addition, the 3 Kentucky Teachers of the Year receive a beautiful custom-designed classwear commemorating their accomplishments. So it is with a heartfelt, jubilant, extremely excited congratulations going out that I say to these educators. They are cream of the crop.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much. Always a favorite time of the year when those awards are announced.
Yes.
The next one is coming from Joanna.
On June 18th, Northern Kentucky 6th grade teacher Hannah Edlin was crowned Miss Kentucky. So she will be representing our state in the 2022 Miss America pageant, but she'll also be representing all of our teachers and students. Edlin grew up in Springfield, but her childhood presented many challenges. When she was in elementary school, her mother was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And this, along with her father's disability, led to financial insecurities that greatly affected her confidence. It wasn't until she was in high school that she began to gain confidence in herself, thanks to a special teacher, Sarah Rakes. Sarah was her family and consumer science teacher. She encouraged Hannah to pursue leadership in several activities, including Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America. And that's special to me. My mom is a retired family and consumer science teacher. So I know the impact that CTE has on their students. Equipped with a new sense of self, Hannah applied and was accepted into our Governor's Scholars Program. So this scholarship gave her the chance to be the first in her family to go to college. She's working on her doctorate at the University of Kentucky. And then part of the Miss America pageant is presenting a social impact project. So inspired by her own story, she has the Read Ready Kentucky project to serve to empower students to ensure that all students have equal access to reading. This is an extension of an existing program called Read Ready Covington. So she will be taking the year off from teaching to focus on her Miss America journey, and she will be the official spokesperson for Kentucky Proud. So along with being Miss Kentucky and being a teacher, she is also a children's book author. She has written the book, Hank the Horse and the Case of the Missing Eggs. And with her partnership with Kentucky Proud, she's writing Hank the Horse and Kentucky Proud. So congratulations to fellow teacher Hannah Edlin.
Excellent. Thank you so much. She sounds like a slacker. Just kidding. That's wonderful. I got to see a lot of tweets when she was back at UK a couple of weeks ago. Everyone is so proud of her. And to Dr. Todd for the Red Suspenders Award.
Right. The Kentucky Department of Education is recognizing about 2,400 key education technology staff from the state's K-12 school districts, as well as KDE's Office of Educational Technology, as recipients of the 2022 Stillwell Award. The EdTech leaders are being recognized for their dedication and for their support of education technology during COVID-19. The pandemic brought out a need for something that if this state didn't have it, we would not have gotten where we were. I think we all saw the excitement in Rupp Arena with the STLP group and its competition, which is just something that they have done for many years under Dave Couch's leadership. But the award especially is significant this time because of the two-year time frame, but recognize the unique circumstances that came up from the pandemic and the crucial role that technology staff played in supporting the entire Kentucky educational system. This year's recipients will accept a special version of the award, a commemorative coin with Bill Stillwell's famous red suspenders engraved on it. We hope to have that ready for them sometime this month. So congratulations to them, and thanks for all that you've done to keep things together with technology during that 2-year period, and keep it up. Thank you.
Excellent. I love the spirit of that award so much. They tease us in the awards committee sometimes when we have 2 winners. Just know Couch and his team have 2,400 winners this year, so they were having trouble narrowing it down.
We may need to rethink.
I know. Test a wide net. No, the sentiment is just so much appreciated, David, and taking this time to say to those folks out there that kept the internet alive and well and running for so many children in remote learning is an important commemoration at this time. So thank you so much. And to Ms. Bloodworth.
Yes. Well, Kentucky was found to meet the requirements and purposes of Part B of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act by the United States Department of Education's Office of Special Education Programs under Section 616 of IDEA. Even through a worldwide pandemic, Kentucky not only met requirements, but improved the overall percentage. This is the 13th year in a row Kentucky has received a meets determination. We are so proud of everyone who helped to make this happen, and we're honored to work alongside Kentucky educators every day.
Excellent, thank you. Associate Commissioner Hilton is here today. Congratulations to you and your entire team. No small feat, especially 13 years running. Thank you. And to Mr. Trimble.
I'm very excited to announce that Kentucky's State Systemic Improvement Plan wins national recognition. KDE's Office of Special Education and Early Learning partners with the State Implementation and Scaling Up of Evidence-Based Practices Center for support with the State Systemic Improvement Plan. The Office of Special Education and Early Learning currently is engaged in 7 regions, 11 districts, and 31 schools to support improvement mathematics outcomes for students with disabilities. As part of this partnership with SISEP Center, representatives from across the nation attend an annual Active States Forum to share their stories and engage in shared learning. During the June 2022 SISEP Active States Forum, Kentucky was honored for showing how implementation science can be used to make a difference for students. Kentucky has been a national model for how a linked teaming structure between the state, region, district, schools, and teachers is critical to building systemic change. So congratulations to the Office of Special Education and Early Learning folks.
Excellent. And again, Associate Commissioner Hilton, congratulations to you and your team. Excellent. At this point, we'll be turning our attention to our partner reports, and with us in person, the man, the myth, the legend, Dr. Aaron Thompson. He should have a walk-on song like this.
I do need a walk-on song. Thank you, Madam Chair. It's good to be here, first of all. It's good to see everybody. I want to thank the Commissioner and the Board and your staff, Commissioner. You have a great staff. Very privileged to work with them, so thank you. A couple of things I do want to say before I get fully into my report is that we had a chance a week ago to represent Kentucky well at the Ronald Reagan Institute. I mean, it was a Kentucky show. We had the Commissioner the day before on video, I think. Then I gave a speech, the Lieutenant Governor gave a speech, and Soliana. So it was good to see the crowd. So Kentucky's been well represented because we're doing good stuff in Kentucky, to be honest with you. And so I'll start out by saying that during the session, toward the end of the session, I was able to get $10 million to work on our healthcare pipeline. And with that, we were able to pull together, I think, quite an impressive group of policy folks, practitioners from the healthcare industry, as well as faculty and others, to come together under this collaborative to really focus on what it's going to take to fulfill the needed areas in Kentucky now, which, as you all know, we have many. I'm the chair of Baptist Health Board, and we can hire 700 nurses at this very minute. And we're going to need far more along those lines. But it's not just nurses, it's across the board. And so we pulled together this collaborative. It's in place now. We were able to hire, we were able to find someone like a unicorn to kind of lead this for us, Dr. Leslie Sizemore. But more than anything else, this is going to be going on for a long time. We've distributed the money now to the campuses, but a part of getting the money, you have to show a partnership with a healthcare agency or a healthcare system. And they are willing to put their skin in the game, no doubt, with their practitioners, with their clinicians, as well as with their money. So we are we will see some outcomes fairly soon. But once again, this is a long-term item. The next thing we're going to be asking for, to be honest with you, will be rehabilitative sciences, the OT, PTs, the mental health, behavioral folks, because as you all know, we knew that we had some issues going on before the pandemic in these areas, and with many of us, Lee, getting older, me, not you, we're going to need all of those other sorts of help. So look forward to seeing us continue to do this. We also received $10 million for an innovative scholarship pilot project. And we're working with KIA. We put together a way to look at how we can help those that are seeking asylum, those that have been displaced based on war, based on a variety of other areas, such as the Ukrainian, Cambodians, and so on. But also, part of the dollars will go to really enhance what we consider to be an equity-focused area of working with people from different countries, sending some of our kids over to their countries to learn how we can truly create a better global society and a global Kentucky. Also, I have a partnership with One Goal that I'm sure you've heard about, because CPE and KDE together announced this partnership. And it's a 2-year program with One Goal, and we're looking at districts that truly want to partnership in helping those that have been disenfranchised in their areas. This partnership will bring post-secondary leadership with supportive high school districts, especially, and school leaders from across the state. And this is a part of our Ed Continuum, as the Commissioner can tell you. And it's really designed to strengthen the pipeline. I should also tell you that this next go-around we'll be working with KDE to look at how we can come together to build the teacher pipeline, especially the pipeline of teachers of color. Also, our 2022 Academic Leadership Academy has been put in place. We figured out a long time ago that we were going to have to grow our own leaders in higher ed, because just like in many places, we are in dearth. And so we've worked with the Bluegrass Tomorrow group to bring forth about 20 leaders, future leaders per year, to really give them some hands-on way of thinking about being an administrator on a college campus. And this year we had our 20, and the fall session, by the way, if you want to just show up, is at Center College on October 21st. We also have a new cohort. In my shop, we created a way to take people of color who are on our college campuses who want to be an administrator, but for many reasons may not have had the opportunity to get the know-how to be that. So it's called ALDI, and it's the Academic Leadership Development Institute. So every year we take on new cohorts where we really infuse them heavily into the process of understanding how to be a good leader. We have mentors to guide them, and the hope is that they'll move into an administrative role as soon as they possibly can, because all of our campuses, you can look and see that we once again have a dearth of leaders of color on our campuses, so we wanted to be proactive to ensure that we do our part. We also have a Quality Matters certification. We took some money from the GEAR funding, and we provided a significant amount of money to Northern, Eastern, and a lot of the other campuses, KCTCS, because we also knew that during the pandemic we may have done a good job going online, but we needed to do a better job of engaging students when we are online. And so it's not just whether or not you're able to put the curriculum in a place where people can get it, but how do we continue to engage students? And so this Quality Matters certification ensures a greater level of quality in the process. We have some meetings with CPE coming up. I'll ask you to take a look at it. The one thing I will say, Madam Chair, as you all know, when I took over now, a long time ago it feels like, that we wanted to kind of change the way we think about post-secondary. We want to make sure that we develop a workforce area that really concentrates on bringing industry and other employers to the table with us to develop curriculum for tomorrow, and also to look at how they can bring our students to their places of employment. So one of the goals that I have is by 2030 that every high school or college student will have a work-based learning opportunity or a research opportunity. So that's going strong. Keep a lookout for that. And you guys know Amanda. By the way, congratulate her. She was promoted to vice president, if you haven't heard. But our P20 efforts, they're really going strong, and we're getting a lot of interest from a lot of people around the country, but more importantly in our state, from our legislators, governor's office, and others, to really show that we can be the beta, if you will, nationally, how K-12 and higher education gets along to go toward the same end. There's a lot more stuff going on, but for the sake of time, I'll leave it there. Happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Excellent. We're doing well on time, so if you have any questions for Dr. Thompson, please feel free.
So that was really an intriguing report, as yours always are. The P20 interest, I think, is very, very well established within the KBE. Yesterday we started talking about the need to knit together our two enterprises, if you will, as it relates to educator workforce development. And I know we've had some nascent efforts in this direction, so I sense that there is great interest within higher education. From your experience, what might be some of the greatest impediments or challenges that we would encounter?
Well, I think just like with any new effort, there's a lot of resistance to change. We have a teacher prep system that was designed a long time ago. I'm just going to talk about higher ed. I won't talk about the licensing piece because we have to look at it holistically, right? One of the things we know we're going to have to do is change the way that we at least bring teachers in. We've got to create what I call a weed-in system. Right now we kind of use a weed-out system. It's like a cattle call. We get them in there and give them a test, and if they make it, then we push them on. If not, we've got to start early. We have a dual credit system in this state. Why not use it as a curricular pipeline as well as a clinical pipeline? So to me, we have to change that. And so the toughest part of doing that is we've always done it this way.
Right.
And so we're dedicated, we're going to change this. As a matter of fact, since KSU now since we're heavily partnering with KSU, we're going to really build a state-of-the-art teacher prep program there as a way to show people that we can do this in the right way. The second thing I think is really important is that we've not done a great job of letting teachers and everybody else know that they're important to the process of our economy. I mean, not just with money they make. We have depersonalized and deprofessionalized teaching in such a manner that it becomes what I consider to be a rote sort of conversation and not a really deeply operationalized conversation that we need to have. So I think we need to start a big campaign, a real campaign, and back it up with a variety of other things. Yes, teacher pay and so on. But for me is that we've talked about this long enough. We've got to figure out how to give it legs, in my opinion. Third thing, you asked me, I'll tell you since I had a little time, I heard. The third thing I think it's important to understand is that this has to be a holistic change, as I said. We just can't do one part over here without changing one parts over there. If we've got policies, if we got regulations, if we got stuff that's been there for 10, 15 years, I can promise you we need to evaluate it and reevaluate it. And we've got to start building a teacher prep program for tomorrow and not just what we need now. And so I think it's really going to take a concerted effort and process to make it happen. I think we can create a pipeline, but if we have a pipeline that's not taking them to a place that they want to be, then I think we haven't done what we promised them that we're able to do. So I think it's going to take a holistic effort.
Excellent. That inspired me just for a moment there with a metaphor for that work. I'm coming into Louisville on 64 often. I run into that place at the bridge where we're on one bridge while they're building another bridge right beside us. And I do think that's where we are, Aaron. We need to be thinking about how we manage the pipeline to the extent that we can right now while we build an entirely new pipeline that kicks in as quickly as we can make it. So I think sometimes we find ourselves caught in wanting to have one foot in one of those, but we really need to have one foot in each of those in order to make that move forward. So I'm anxious to engage in that work. I heard some of that conversation yesterday. It's critically important that we are facing what will very soon, if not already, become a crisis in the educator workforce. So anxious to have that conversation. I loved your big ideas.
Chair Young, I don't want to belabor the point, but here's the reason I feel we've got to kind of think forward on this. The habits of all workers have changed from the vision that many of us had when we entered. I dare say we thought in terms of a career in the same industry, a life of work, but if you were real lucky, you were working in the same organization and enhancing your standing and benefits and da-da-da-da-da-da. Today's workers don't think like that. And so we are in a business that has to be stood up and sustained and thriving with what will be a much more mobile workforce and labor dynamic than we've ever experienced. I mean, the rules aren't written yet. It is still we are still trying to figure it out and understand how do we attract our share of the talent pool to offer high quality educational services to the learners of this Commonwealth. That's the new question. It's not filling classrooms. That's today's crisis. It is standing up an education enterprise that is strong, high integrity, high quality, highly productive outcomes for students. So as we're thinking forward, let's go on to the future with the folks that are going to be responsible for making it happen or not, and not try to improve the system that we learned, but build the system that's going to serve our future. So that's, I really want us to get on the solid ground of we're building this for what's going to come. We're going to do the best we can for where we are, but we got to get that new bridge
That's right.
operating.
And all we have to do, Dr. Todd, is get the ivory tower to go along with us. So, no, I see a lot of change in my own context at the university, and I feel like there's this confluence of will to think about that kind of the new dynamic, the new demand. Exactly. I think it's important. And I heard you all talking about that a lot yesterday. And when you looked at those OECD scenarios for the future, I think this is one of those challenges that presents itself to us right now. So, Dr. Todd.
I don't have any answers, but I think we're at a time in Kentucky where we can reach the population and convince them that this new way of learning is vitally important to our existence. I made a list, I missed the pontoons last night, but I made a list of the recent announcements, just the top 5 export products for the state of Kentucky. Aerospace, $7.9 billion. Pharmaceuticals and medicines, $3.3 billion. Motor vehicles, $2.7 billion. Resins, rubber, fiber, and filaments, $1.3 billion. Motor vehicle parts, $1.1 billion. Those are industries in this state. And if we don't provide them a group of people who can work in there, not just to putting parts together, but adding value to what they're here, you won't keep them. Then you look at the recent announcements that have taken place. Ascend Elements, $310 million investment for 250 jobs in advanced battery materials in Hopkinsville. Envision AESC, $2 billion, 2,000 jobs, electrical vehicle batteries, Bowling Green. Ford and SK Innovation, $5.8 billion, 5,000 jobs, electrical batteries, Hardin County. Other industries, OI Glass, $239 million facility for 140 jobs in new glass bottle manufacturing. Cataline, $175 million for 277 jobs in pharmacy and biotech in Winchester. These are announcements where people are coming to us for some reason, and I just hope we can keep them. And we need to have them in the conversations that we have to let them know that we want to help them. If you look at the national economic development opportunities, the semiconductor bill that just passed, the Senate, is saying to the rest of the world, we're not going to let everybody manufacture for us anymore and run out of parts when a pandemic hits. We're going to bring semiconductor manufacturing, which requires pretty high-tech stuff. And I've often said that high-tech companies aren't just a bunch of bonehead engineers with slide rules, and don't use those anymore, but they hire everybody. You got to have accountants, you got to have human resources people, you got to have people who have the soft skills to keep the company together. And I think we're going to miss an opportunity if we don't put some dramatic stake in the ground. And I'll say that it's great to talk about deep learning and United We Learn, but if we don't put our foot in the ground and put some concrete under those statements, we're going to miss an opportunity the state hasn't had before. We don't have coal anymore. We don't have tobacco anymore. We don't have cut and sew anymore. But we have people coming to us who are coming for a reason. The new companies that can grow in America are not going to grow on the East Coast and West Coast. It's too expensive. There's absolutely no loyalty in those places. When IBM bought my company, they said, what's your turnover rate for engineers? That's what do you mean? They said, how many engineers do you lose every year? I said, we've lost 2 in 12 years. And they went back to school to get their doctorates because people want to work here. They want to live here. They want to be here. The best talent we have, we've had them to exit the state because we can't provide them employment opportunities that are worth them staying here. We can get them back. And so we've got a chance. And I can't tell you how proud I am of the fact that this commissioner and that commissioner are talking to each other. Because if we don't solve that issue, if we don't put teachers out in the classroom, and we got to support them. You're not going to take a teacher who's been teaching out of a book and say, all right, now you're going to become an active teacher. Start teaching people project-based learning. It's not going to happen unless we put some stake in the ground to make it happen. And so we have a chance. We have people talking, having a conversation now. We have a governor that's bringing in these companies that have their finger on the future of America and the future of the world. And it's time for us to take our place, and I believe we can do it.
One more other item to pull on what Lee's saying. You're absolutely right. So that's why we have to be at the table with employers, but we also have to understand that the latest number, we have 47% of those kids graduating from high school going to college. We're never going to build what we need to build as long as those numbers stay there. And so it is about deep learning, but we've got to give them legs. We've got to give professional development to the teachers, but we've also got to figure out how do we, I mean, you're talking about a leaky bucket. That's a leaky bucket when you have half of your student population graduating from high school not going to college. I mean, when I say college, I'm even talking about a technical certificate. I'm talking about a 4-year degree. So you're right. I mean, these are the sorts of things that we have to better line out in some strategic operation.
Excellent. Masterclass. Great conversation this morning. Thank you so much. And all of those data points are so helpfully, it just contextualizes the dilemma, but for me, it also raises the sense of urgency to do the work at hand in the best interest of the Commonwealth. So thank you for that. And thank you, Dr. Thompson. To the man who needs no walk-on song, a report from Commissioner Glass.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll do my best to be brief. You mentioned at the outset the impacts of the Eastern Kentucky districts, and that we have had our first huddle with superintendents in those affected areas. We try to keep those huddle calls really short, but this first one took an hour and a half because there was a lot to unpack and get started on. One of the things I think that was most effective about that was we had Rob Clayton from Warren County, Joe Henderson from Mayfield, and Lenny Whalen from Dawson Springs on to talk about what the Eastern Kentucky superintendents can expect as they recover. Of course, those three districts were impacted by the tornadoes in Western Kentucky in December and are further along in rebuilding and recovery, whereas the Eastern Kentucky districts are still just trying to assess what the extent of the damage is and how long cleanup and possible reconstruction is going to take. But we did hear from the Eastern Kentucky superintendents how much they appreciated hearing from those Western Kentucky superintendents just some things to think about in the short term. Once we get out of this sort of immediate phase, what will happen next, and then what are some long-term things that they'll need to think about. Things like you should expect a flood of materials to come in from all over the country where people are hearing about it and want to help. And there will be things that you need that are helpful, and then there will be things that you don't. Piles of stuff that will show up from everywhere and that you will create another problem because you'll have to manage where all that stuff goes. So that was something that they talked about. And also just there's a flood of financial resources to come in. And the Western Kentucky superintendents talked about making sure that you have clear accounting procedures for how all of that cash is handled, and that at the end of this, you don't want any controversies around or allegations that any of that money was misused or misappropriated. And bringing in supports from organizations to help manage the complex network of steps you have to take to apply for federal supports and manage all of the reimbursements that may come through that. So those were the kinds of conversations that we had with the Western Kentucky superintendents, in addition to just hearing from them directly about what was the extent of the damage in their community. There's a great deal of variation in that. Some communities are absolutely devastated. You've seen the images on television. Some of you have visited those communities, and we have some towns that are just completely annihilated, and then we'll have to almost start over. And others that have much lighter, minor damage. It was really heartening to see the superintendents in the regions already start connecting, sharing numbers, saying, I've got this over here, I'll move this to you, you can bring your people to our place, here's where you can go. You started hearing immediately them working together to think about, we've got something that is important and necessary in our community, we can get it to you, or you can get your people here. So those kinds of collaborations already started taking place. A difference with the Western Kentucky tornadoes is in Western Kentucky, of course, we had incredible catastrophic damage to communities, but really the damage to school buildings was fairly light, other than some damage to the bus facility in Mayfield. A lot of the damage to the buildings wasn't extensive. So we were able to, once they moved past being sort of a disaster center for the community, you could start thinking about getting kids back in the building and get things going again. In Eastern Kentucky, we've got a different problem in that we've got a number of school buildings that may be inoperable for an indeterminate amount of time. Some of them, it may not be worth rebuilding them or putting them back at all. And we're still right at the beginning of trying to understand that. So thinking about the disruptions that kids have been through and the communities have been through over the course of the pandemic, and now Eastern Kentucky is now facing this, what may be an extended delay in getting school going, lots of questions around where do these kids go, where do we have space to offer educational services for them, lots of fear that the Eastern Kentucky districts have around what happens if people leave our community and don't come back, what happens to that. So lots of concerns around that. And again, we're just at the beginning of understanding that. We're doing all we can from KDE's standpoint to support these districts wherever they are in that process. We have assigned Robin Morley, an incredibly capable person in the Office of Finance and Operations, as a single point of contact for these districts. When with the Western Kentucky districts, we set up a email account that people could use and send questions to, but we really found out that was probably not personal enough. They needed a person that they could reach out to. So we've asked Robin Morley to serve in that role. She'll be sort of a concierge, hear what people need, start connecting them with resources within the department, with other supports that we have at the state and at the federal level, sort of helping them navigate through that. So we hope that model of having a person who's assigned to this, at least in the short term, may be a good support for them. Shifting gears, and I wanted to update you on the two schools that you serve as the governing board for. The Kentucky School for the Blind and the Kentucky School for the Deaf. Look forward to welcoming students back on campus on August 14th. So we just have a couple of weeks to go before registration and move-in day and the first day of school following on August 15th. Looking specifically at KSB, they had a successful 3 weeks of summer school. 52 students from around the Commonwealth attended the first week, and 15 students attended the second week, and 8 students attended the third week. Activities ranged from a trip on the Belle of Louisville to swimming and spending the day at Kentucky Kingdom. High school and middle school students visited the U of L Center for Archaeology and Cultural Heritage and participated in curating objects found during the archaeological dig at the school. Some of you may have seen the stories about that going on. 20 students from KSB and the Commonwealth worked at Kentucky Kingdom and at the Louisville Zoo, and participants in the as participants in the summer work program at Kentucky Kingdom. Several students had job coaches provided by the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation, and the students performed a variety of jobs, including taking tickets, working in food service, working on the grounds at both locations, and stocking the gift shops. Shifting to KSD, KSD Summer School concluded on June 30th with 35 students in attendance for 4 weeks. They were focused on instruction. They had weekly field trips, and it sounds like a lot of fun. They went to the Explorium in Lexington, the Kentucky Railway Museum for a train ride. They went to the Pioneer Playhouse to spend a day with the actors and watch the first interpreted play held at the facility, as well as a day at Monkey Joe's in Lexington. I don't know what that is, but my kids are going to have
Sounds like one.
Yeah, it's probably some kind of bouncy house thing. So maybe we could do a future retreat at Monkey Joe's, Madam Chair.
There you go.
Also, the Mini Deaf Olympics is celebrating its 40-year anniversary, and KSD was honored to host this year's Mini Deaf Olympics for July 7th through 16th. There were approximately 80 students and volunteers on campus participating in various sports and activities, and KSD has been invited to host the Mini Deaf Olympics again next year. Flowers and flags hang across campus as part of their 200th anniversary celebration. Mini Deaf Olympics kicked off the first of many events to occur this school year. For more information about the gala in April and how to purchase tickets, visit the 200th Celebration Facebook page for information on that. Shifting to the ATCs, of course, I mentioned earlier just the impacts that are happening in Eastern Kentucky that we're all so aware of. We do have demolition on the Breathitt County ATC facility with plans for new construction, hopefully beginning in the spring of 2023. The original Breathitt County ATC was constructed in 1964, so we are looking into options with KCTCS right now to provide services for that region at the Hazard KCTCS site, but that is a process that's in motion right now. In response to regional workforce needs, new programs will be underway at a few of the ATCs for the upcoming school year. Breckinridge County will be offering a law and public safety course. Four Rivers Career Academy in Fulton County will have industrial maintenance. Warren County ACT, in partnership with Warren County Schools and the Southern Kentucky Career and Technical College, will offer a heavy equipment operation program, and Leslie County ATC will offer a teaching and learning program in response to the increasing teacher shortage, which is in step with what we were just talking about. The Office of Career and Technical Education is looking forward to the new academic year and the opportunity to increase student engagement and achievement. And I don't think we had Beth on when the board met last, but we want to welcome Beth Hargis as the new Associate Commissioner over the Office of Career and Technical Education. Of course, she fills the shoes of David Horseman, who we celebrated last night. Beth brings to us a wealth of experience and background and prevailed in a competitive and tough search for this position, and we're excited about Beth in this role. Madam Chair, that concludes my remarks. My full report can be found in the board's portal, and I'm happy to entertain any questions that you may have.
Excellent, thank you. What questions might you have for the Commissioner?
Just one comment. What a wonderful thing to do to bring the eastern part of the state together, the western part of the state, and the learnings that have unfortunately been gained in western Kentucky that can help so much in eastern Kentucky. Our church was going to send a group down to Bremen this week to work, but what they're doing is they're loading up stuff from western Kentucky to take to eastern Kentucky because it's an oversupply of certain things. So I applaud you for pulling that group together.
Something that really worries me is we just got finished with still part of a pandemic for a couple of years, and now this for some of these school districts like Breathitt and these places. I don't know when they'll get back in and what they're going to do, and imagine how hard this is going to be on those children, again. So, not something to be worried about.
And I heard the superintendent in Breathitt just lament that it will be many years until they actually get through this and recover as a community and as learners in that community. So I think it's really important that we not lose sight of that. This is whammy after whammy, and it's going to be it's going to take its toll.
And he's worked so hard to build that program up because remember it started down here.
Right.
They've done such a great job, and Superintendent Watts and now this, so it's a tough situation for him. I'll tell you, he's a fine man too. I'll tell you.
So, Madam Chair, please. I've been thinking about the messaging and the kind of leadership. I want to say leadership of hope because it is just not lost on anybody. I mean, you have a tornado on the western part of the state in December, and then massive floods right as you're trying to get ready for school. And you look at the pandemic map and it's red. The state is red for the most part. So it certainly kind of intensifies the issue of supporting really everybody and the trauma that that is being experienced. But it's also it's like how do you communicate hope and determination and persistence and not be a Pollyanna, because the flood's real. And so is the intense spread that has surged in the state. That's real too. So I guess I'm just arguing that hope is really an important component here, but it's made authentic when we're doing what we know we can do in the moment. And so I do think that we've got, as a part of the back to school, this is a new season, and it might not be like we dreamed it would be, but it's here, we're here, it's real, and this is what we can do together. I mean, I'm not a message person, but I do think that learners and teachers and education leaders, community leaders, we need a strong message now. Mm-hmm. I know you got, just write a check for the PR firm to come in and help Tony push it out.
It really is a delicate balance. It's not easy to just talk about, it's not helpful to just talk about hope and resilience and you're strong, we know you can do this, etc. when they're exhausted and families are displaced and all of the reality begins to seep in. And so I do know that bolstering support from leadership to leadership, like you've done through the huddles, and making somebody on Robin's team available as the point person that can help them when they need help. Those kinds of things really matter in the message. So sending a message of hope without them internalizing it as just do more, just work harder, just be more optimistic. You know, it has to come with tangible support on our part. Yeah, don't just keep digging deeper. Yeah, that's exhausting.
We've tried to emphasize that with these Eastern Kentucky districts, that they are our priority. And when they call, that is elevated above anything else we have going on. Just even during our conversations yesterday when you were going through the stations and getting your merit badges, I had a call from an Eastern Kentucky superintendent with a question. And so I stepped out and took the question, and within 5 minutes connected him with Todd, and we provided the answer. So that's the kind of responsiveness that I think our Eastern Kentucky districts can expect from us. They are our priority.
Excellent. Very helpful. All right.
That inspires hope,
It does.
you know, that.
All right, thank you. And to the whole team, thank you very much. At this point, we'll turn our attention to the consent agenda. As you know, KDE staff has identified these items as those that are typically non-controversial and routine in nature. As a reminder, this item does require a vote as a single item consistent with the individual information actions you received in the portal. You receive that information in advance, though, because you do have the prerogative as a board to remove any item from consent. So, Joanna, if there was something in there that we wanted to talk about separately, for example, you could ask at this time that it be removed from consent. Do we have any such items to be discussed? If not, do we have any questions about any of the consent items as presented? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Todd. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Trimble. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approval of the consent agenda, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. At this point, we're going to take a short break. We do not have a quorum for our curriculum committee, so we are going to flow as a full board into the operations committee items. I've asked Dr. Todd if he would lead that discussion for us, but at this time I have 10:07 Central Time. Let's take a brief stretch and bio break and reconvene at 10:15 Central. Okay, welcome back. I have to gavel us.
We have to.
There we go.
Yeah, we can get her.
All right. The next item on our agenda would typically be the committee meetings, but we are going to go ahead and I've asked Ms. Bloodworth if she would share, using this slide deck for reference, about the recommendations for the state level Portrait of a Learner graduate subcommittee work that we were able to attend and kind of the status of that now. So if you would, Ms. Bloodworth.
All right, well, sorry that Randy could not be here. He is the chairperson of that subcommittee and doing a really great job of bringing some key people together to think through this Portrait of a Learner graduate kind of work. It's new to me, really, so all of it is really exciting, and it's really nice to have all those voices at the table that have done a lot of work around this. So these are the skills dispositions that we seem to be kind of rallying around, that we find kind of common across a lot of the different portraits that we see. And if you want to advance the slide. So the first one, critical thinker, and thinks deeply and makes informed decisions to create solutions or new understanding supported by relevant and reliable evidence. And then another one, effective communicator. So engage different audiences respectfully by exchanging ideas and information responsibly, listening actively, speaking and writing clearly, and using print and digital media appropriately. There's the empowered learner, demonstrates mastery and application of academic competencies, develops the skills and dispositions to persist through difficulties and plan for a future of self-improvement. There's the productive collaborator, engages with others to achieve a common goal through building positive relationships, actively listening, showing empathy, and making individual contributions to a larger group. And engaged citizen, shows respect and empathy across differences, embraces diversity of opinion, seeks cultural understanding, participates in the democratic process to challenge the status quo, and makes a positive impact on their community and their world. So these are the ones that we have really talked about and continuing to work through. Our committee wanted people that are in that subcommittee to go back to their groups, get feedback, bring it back to the committee again, to continue to refine and make sure that these are the things that we want to land on. But we wanted to bring this to you all to kind of show you what we've been working on, and to continue. We want to continue this work, and that's what we would ask of you all today, is to maybe a motion that would postpone any action today, and we will go back and meet some more and then bring back something in October.
Excellent. Yes, so if you want to bring that forward in the form of a motion, Ms. Bloodworth?
All right, so I make a motion that we postpone action on the portrait until the October meeting.
Excellent, thank you. And do we have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Just a comment that I would add,
Yes.
a really productive meeting, very helpful, thank you, and to Dr. Poe for running that conversation around Portrait of a Learner. And the kind of conversation that we had was just a reiteration that this would be a state-level model of how to operationalize around a Portrait of a Learner. Learning content is still our core business. Academic standards are still our core business, and it's never been about anything other than that. But if that's the core of the work that we do, the Portrait of a Learner expands that to the skills and dispositions that we hear from the workforce all the time about what we want from those workers that Lee was talking about earlier, in terms of empathy, the ability to see different perspectives, the ability to work in teams, and also to be self-sufficient. So for me, this is lifting our eyes up to a larger purpose and a larger mission beyond what has been traditionally the academic content in the work of teaching and learning in our schools. So for me, that is a big part of the new vision for teaching and learning. And as Dr. Thompson has said, we have that same kind of Portrait of a Learner model at post-secondary. So looking at that seamlessness around knowledge, which is still, again, critical and core to the work that we do, plus skills, plus dispositions that lead to this well-rounded, human-centered effort on the part of Portrait of a Learner. So thank you for the leadership there. And the other question that kind of arose that we wanted to talk about too was that just because we're promoting one model, it doesn't mean stop the work anywhere else in school. So those people who are already working on, in many school districts, well over half the school districts already have some kind of level of Portrait of a Learner in process. Don't stop, keep doing that. This is not going to replace that, but it will inform policy as we move forward. On that motion, yes, Commissioner.
I wanted to offer a yes and to the list of proposed skills and dispositions, and I don't know if this is the right opportunity.
Certainly
to do
open
that.
for discussion, yeah.
Yeah, so perhaps something for the committee to think about. I think this is a really good list, and I know it's culled from other work of portraits of graduates that have been in place around the state, and lots of thinking over decades around what should this list be. But it seems to me one yes and addition to this would be something around the creativity, artistry, innovation. I didn't see that in those, but I think it's a really important component that we want to intentionally encourage, nurture.
Excellent, and I think we could take that back to the committee. Holly raised the same question actually at the subcommittee meeting. In some way, we're thinking that this expanded, by adding these descriptors, critical, effective, empowered, productive, engaged, that we can get to some of that, but there was no anti-creativity as a specific indicator either in that conversation. So I think that would be helpful. One of the things that I heard Sharon say yesterday that I was shouting amen from was about agency, so that every learner has agency over her own learning. And so we definitely wanted to include that in the empowered and productive part of this, so that we really do get at agentic students who own their own learning, which is a huge shift in the paradigm. Dr. Todd?
I thought about curiosity. I think we don't, in the past, create an opportunity for curiosity to really grow. But when I see the first thing on that list, critical thinker, we've taught memory for so long, memorization but not thinking. When I was at senior UK, IBM had put their plan in Lexington. They were beginning to try to recruit UK students to come work there. They flew a dozen of us up to some of their plants, and they gave us all a little plaque, or a little triangle with a saying on it. It was think. And I've still got on my desk, had it there forever. But that's so fundamental to what we need to do. The thing that impressed me too, when I went to, after I graduated UK, I went to MIT for graduate work, but I taught an undergraduate class. And up there in all their undergraduate classes, they tell the students, write down any formula, anything you want to write on a piece of paper, you can bring it in. Because we don't want you to memorize all that stuff. They gave you problems which you had to think about what to do with all that stuff. What you found is the people who were flipping through that page were in deep trouble.
Yeah.
But they tell you, let's get you to the point where you're applying stuff and not, memorizing stuff. So I think that's a great list, and the addition the commissioner put on there is important too. Just a different way of thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, knowledge is necessary, but not sufficient today. Dr. Thompson?
The item, and I'm thinking about how this matches up with us in post-secondary. And, Commissioner, you may be getting to this, and so with Dr. Todd, but critical thinking is evaluating all inside that school box, right? That's what critical thinking is. But when you come to conclusions and you apply it to problem solving, that's creative output, right? No matter what it is. So I would love to see a conversation at least having around problem solving, because that takes agency. Problem solving takes creativity. Problem solving takes all of those other elements, and it's a decisive way of actually getting input. Critical thinking only allows you to evaluate, right? I mean, that's what it does, and you want to do that, but sooner or later you have to apply that knowledge. So that application of knowledge is problem solving or issue solving.
Excellent, thank you. So do we capture those? I'm sure Meredith did.
Yes.
So we can take those back to the committee as well. Thank you. But yeah, you're really vibing on what we have in mind for this in terms of this description of what we want for every single learner. We talk to people, my team and I talk to people all the time. They say, oh yeah, we do that with our gifted kids. Oh yeah, we do that with our honors kids, our college-bound kids, or whatever, as we sort and select. So John Dewey said this is not new stuff. This is bringing back what we know about rigorous inquiry-based learning and applying it as an expectation for every learner in the Commonwealth. So, thrilled about the work, also really pleased with the leadership of the curriculum committee on moving it forward in a pretty efficient way. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? The motion, as a reminder, is to postpone our decision about the final portrait with this input from today, as well as across engagement groups. Probably 2 more meetings in the interim, and then we'll have an action ready for you at the October meeting. All those in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you.
Hearty thank you.
And a hearty thank you. There we go. Thank you so much. All right. At this time, we're flowing into the items that would otherwise have been presented to the KBE Operations Committee. And the first of those, Dr. Todd, is KBE support for Kentucky State Schools. And I think Associate Commissioner Beth Hargis is here if you want to come on up to the table. And if I said Dr. Thompson, I meant Dr. Todd. I'm getting my T's mixed up, sorry.
They get us mixed up all the time.
Yeah. Which one is that guy?
It would be an honor.
Yep, you ready?
Yeah, I'm supposed to tell you we're ready, so.
Okay, turn it over to Beth.
I'm going to do the KSB and
Okay.
D. Which one are we doing? The state supportive state schools, I thought. That's what I thought I heard.
I think the mic, is the mic already on?
One of the things that we had talked about was having you all, help us with our policy approvals and to have the committee to work with that. So we are very open to that. We want you all involved with our with the ATCs. One thing about the ATC setups is that we try to maintain that close relationship with all of our superintendents within the local districts. So, but as long as we have your support, I think that will go a long way in helping build those relationships.
Is that a request or is that a, open it for discussion? I'm not sure where to go with that.
Chair?
So first we have the amendments, right?
Well, so just a point of order, I apologize. So we originally were going to have a discussion around the creation of a subcommittee, but I think in preparation for the meeting determined that perhaps a different path forward would be to talk about ways that the board could support our ATCs and KSB and KSD. So we have our associate commissioners here just to talk about the schools and any way that the board members could be more directly involved in the work of those schools.
Okay,
so if you have any
excellent.
questions, and certainly we do want to highlight that we have the 200th anniversary of one of our state schools, and you did receive a flyer about that, so there will be lots of opportunities for you to be involved with that campus. But anything that you'd like to ask either associate commissioner about our state schools and how the board can be more physically involved, so on campuses more regularly.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. I appreciate that reminder because I needed the memory jog there. So I know, Greta, that we have been able to visit both KSD and KSB on more than one occasion, including their graduations. And it's my understanding that there are advisory groups to both of those. I'm wondering, Beth, too, if that's also true for the ATCs. So I guess one of the things I want is some kind of environmental scan about who those groups are and how they function. And it doesn't have to be in detail today, but it might be something that we could take a look at and kind of decide. What we don't want to do is to exceed our authority and governance, but we also don't want to limit it unnecessarily if we can be a further support to those schools that are under our more direct control. So,
Absolutely. We have 50 area technology centers right now across the state. And each of those schools have steering and advisory committees. So the steering committee is made up of the local administration from our feeder schools, from the feeder local districts. We have business and industry representatives on there. And so the steering committee is the one that works with the principal to look at the overall programming for the school and to bring any concerns, because we are trying to meet the needs of the business and industry and local communities. So each then program area has an advisory committee, and they will provide guidance on curriculum, again, different pathways that are offered within the program areas. So these are all vital to the operation of the centers. So again, as far as KBE support, what we need is really the recognition of the schools, and you're really good at that. As far as each meeting, we have a moment where the commissioner talks about the ATC. And we also need help with the marketing of just overall career and technical education. So anything that you all can do to help us in that way, we would be very much appreciative of, and in addition to what you already do.
And with regard to KSB and KSD, they also have advisory boards, as you mentioned, and they're made up of alumni, local school district personnel, and other members of the deaf and/or blind communities. And they are charged with providing advice to the Commissioner of Education on any unmet need or recommendation that they deem to be appropriate with regard to anything from instruction to operations to funding to that sort of thing. They meet regularly, and we can certainly absolutely send you those dates. They're open to the public. We actually include that information on the website. But probably the thing that has is so exciting right now, and they would KSD would love the board to engage with the bicentennial, because next year is the 200th anniversary of the Kentucky School for the Deaf. That's huge, and there's a handful of schools for the deaf and schools for the blind remaining across the nation, and so it's a very both schools, very tight-knit community. So when they approach a 200-year anniversary, it is huge. And so what they have done at KSD, and I think you have these events, if not, I'll be certain to get those to Meredith to get to you again, but they've started with July of 2022 being just the opening ceremony, like it's coming next year. And so for the next year, every month there's an event that would draw in the community, parents, families, alumni, other local school districts that actually send kids. And they have piggybacked onto events that are already occurring, like basketball tournaments. And keep in mind, at KSD, when they have basketball games, it's not just traveling to the nearest high school, across county lines, but it may be going to Texas to the School for the Deaf. So it's huge for them. And both principals have shared with me how much they appreciate the support from the board and the commissioner sharing the information, and then also including good news items. They feel supported, and obviously want you to visit at any given time. August 14th will be our opening day. Our students will be back on campus. That's a big deal. It's a cookout. Families come in. They get to know the staff, and it's really more of a. It's not like an opening day at a regular school, because these are your families. Our kids come and their families. And then the other thing that I would just leave you with is, when we think about KSD and KSB, we think about two schools that have a couple hundred kids, in Louisville or Danville. And that, while that is kind of the epicenter where our kids go, keep in mind that the only way that students enter KSB and KSD is through the IEP process, the Admissions and Release Committee meeting. And so it's not the least restrictive environment for every student who is blind or every student who is deaf. So we recognize that. So we have a very strong outreach committee with both schools, and provide services to local school districts across the state so that we're able to reach, hundreds of students and not just, a couple hundred. So, there's that. And then they also do short course in which students may need to come onto campus for specific needs like Braille instruction, or, how to use a cane with orientation and mobility, or, ASL, American Sign Language skills. So it's a very, it's like the hubs are in Danville and Louisville, but, we reach across the state.
All right, thank you. Commissioner.
To fill in some more of the context of why this conversation is taking place, we had a group that group connected with KSD that requested that the board take a look at really the governance and leadership structure of how we were supporting both schools, and we extended that to say, well, if we're going to do that, we should also think about the ATCs, because it's the same. This is the governing board over both of those state schools and over the ATCs. So something that I think may be helpful for the board as the governing body over the ATC programs and both of those state schools is to understand the leadership structure and reporting structure at the schools and at the ATCs. So if you could each talk about how that structure is set up, the leadership structure, who reports to who, how that works, that may be helpful to the board.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, at the ATC level, we have, of course, that's a branch within the Office of Career and Technical Education, the Kentucky Tech branch. We have a division director for the Division of Technical Schools and Continuous Improvement, and that branch is within that division. We do have 3 area supervisors that we refer to that cover the East, West, and Central schools. Each of them have roughly in between 15 to 18 schools that they supervise. And of course, they serve as a liaison between the KDE and the OCTE and the school. And one of their duties too is, again, to build that relationship with the local districts, because the local districts, the The ATCs sometimes are located on those campuses, and we're serving those students. So it's very important that the local district maintain some leadership in there and some good communication. So that's how we're set up, though. Our staff, they're all KDE staff. We do have some memorandums of agreement where staff will be hired by the local districts and serve in that capacity. But for the most part, they are KDE staff, and they operate under our policies and procedures. And even our MOA principals and staff, they are held accountable to the OCTE policies.
It's very similar at KSB and KSD. They're all KDE staff. This is like Special Ed 101 with all the all the acronyms, but they are staff of the Office of Special Education and Early Learning at the department, and both schools are overseen by a principal, and there's assistant principals / chief academic officer. KSB has a chief academic officer as well as an assistant principal. KSD has an assistant principal with additional support, whether it's middle school, elementary, or high school. Those principals report directly to a director of state schools, which is a division in the Office of Special Education and Early Learning, and then that director reports to me, which that position currently is vacant. We have interviews scheduled next week. And then, of course, I report to the commissioner, and you're the governing body. So that's the structure. I will also say that the schools have a director of special education, and this is a critical role for our schools specifically because, like I said, our students all come to us through that process from local districts. And so that director of special education position spends a lot of time working with local districts around student needs within the district, transportation, family support needs. We do a lot of outreach with their families. And so she's the conduit, if you will, between the local district and KDE.
So to sum up the structure at both schools, at both sets of schools, is really that there's a principal at the school who reports to a division director, who reports to an associate commissioner, who reports to me, and I report to you. And so that's the leadership structure that's in place. Some of the context of raising this conversation is there is a state statute that requires a superintendent to be in place at KSB and KSD. At least at KSD, there have been requests to hire someone with the title of superintendent at that school. At least going back to Commissioner Pruitt, the department has asserted that the Commissioner of Education is effectively serving as the superintendent of both of those schools, and it would be a redundant and unnecessary administrative expense to add a superintendent position at both schools. Because what you've been able to hear, the department's position is that we have a leadership structure in place for decision making, and adding more administrative costs and personnel at these sites is not a necessary step.
Question.
Yes.
What's been your experience with the transition to post-secondary education from each of the schools?
With regard to KSB and KSD?
Yes, but and ATC as well, all three.
We've got some pretty strong pathways at KSB and KSD. Our students have been in national culinary competitions and have come home with runner-up trophies, which has been really cool. We've had a few other opportunities, but I'll share this, and this is kind of an extension of some work that's occurring. Dr. Hargis and I were able to, this year for the first time, hire a person who is a special educator and a career and tech educator. He's kind of a unicorn out there, so to speak, and so because he understands the landscape of the special education, but he also understands the landscape of career and tech ed. And so, the idea behind that was not only to scale up the work that we do for many of our students with disabilities in CTE out in the district or in the ATCs, but also to scale up what we do at KSB and KSD. And so he literally just came to work, I think it was like last week. Yeah, so it's brand new, and we're super excited about that because our schools, obviously with both of us and the structure and having this person, they can be, they can be pilots for anything that we implement within local districts.
Anybody? Yeah.
From the ATC side of it, we do have special needs students in our schools. Quite often those students will thrive, but one thing that we were missing was that special ed professional in the building to help guide us as far as ensuring that we are implementing their IEPs appropriately. So again, this person that we've hired is going to be a tremendous asset in making sure that our special needs are covered. As far as post-secondary transition, we offer dual credit in our ATCs. Our staff members are eligible. In fact, we have most of our dual credit instructors are through KCTCS, but we do have some that offer dual credit with the 4-year institutions. And so what we try to do is make it intentional credits. And so we know that, and we don't want students in the ATCs that are not college bound. That's not the purpose. We want everyone. We want everyone that's going to benefit from an area technology center program pathway. So we are looking, we know that they're going to require training post-secondary, and I mean after high school, regardless whether it's at post-secondary institution or whether it's on-the-job training. So we do advise them and we encourage them to get post-secondary credits while they can, because that's always something that they can fall back on. And we also know that so many students will graduate with no intention of going to college. And then once they get a few years of life under their belt, they realize the significance of that and will come back.
I was just thinking what Aaron was mentioning a minute ago about the post-secondary going rate. You'd think with some of the opportunities in the economy that are coming now that the ATCs could be useful there.
Yes.
And one experience I had, I went to Dubai when I was in office at UK, and the Commissioner of Education took me through a new community college they built. And about 3 wings of that were for the blind. And after the third one, I said, what's the issue here? And he said, we're so diabetic that we have so many blind participants that we have to provide opportunities for them. He said, if you have the creamiest of all creams you want to sell, bring it here. I said, it's because you all wear those gowns so nobody can see your belt size, I guess. But I don't know if you've looked into what they do for opportunities or not, but it was an eye-opening situation for me. There's immaculate facilities that they were putting in place for that population. So I think the visits we made to the 2 schools were just really, educational for us, and I think it's applaud the Commissioner for bringing this issue to the committee as well to talk about what we could do to help.
We direct traffic just a bit. I have Mrs. McCrary, followed by Dr. Robinson and Dr. Thompson. Is that?
I want to circle back to what you first said when you were seated. Basically, you want support from the board. Can you give us a clearer picture of that? You mentioned activities like the celebration, the 2-year celebration at school for the blind and things like that. What about at our ATCs? What are you envisioning?
I'm not sure truly that a lot of our staff in our ATCs understand the connection with KBE. So and I think in the October meeting, you will be at Logan County Career Center, and I think that will be very beneficial so that they will be able to see the structure and understand the role that you play. And so I think that will be very beneficial. And again, we would just like for you all to understand and to know the schools across the state and to feel free to visit those. And again, just offer the verbal support. And you do a good job of that, but we would just like to see that taken as far as we can, as far as getting the word out for the CTE in the state.
Could I back up just a little bit and say, I would love to be invited to things in the 2nd district. I would be there. I just need to know when they are, what they are, and what they would like for me to do. And I feel strongly that the majority of this board feels the same way.
Okay.
I will not speak for them, but I will infer it a bit. So could you notify the leadership
Absolutely.
that we are very interested in being involved? We just need to know.
And I think that's an excellent point, because the area tech centers, not many of them will have, demonstrations like KBE, KSD, KSB, KSD. But I will definitely let the principals know and the supervisors, because they do have things on occasion, parent nights or anything like that, where they're displaying the things that they do, and so we will make sure that you all will receive invites to that.
I
Thank
would
you.
love to even just visit, but it's not one of those things that you will necessarily go and knock on their door and say, hey, I'm here. I mean, even when I'm in a school for another purpose, I will always go visit with the leadership and let them know I'm in the building. I think that's the polite thing to do. But just for a visit, please let them know. In District 2, I'm very open.
Okay. I appreciate you bringing that up, and we will absolutely do that.
Excellent, thank you. Dr. Robinson?
Well, in addition, I guess I've been sitting here thinking, what are the aspirations that within the work and minds of the advocates for these programs that we need to kind of establish in our minds as objectives to be achieved. And so in addition to visiting, I think that it would be helpful for us to know where are we trying to go next, and how can we help in engaging with other advocates to make that happen, and being cheerleaders and tellers of the good news after it does. So let's think in terms of engaging KBE in an organic way, as well as in the by way of our responsibilities to hear how you're doing, to make sure you have a policy and administrative environment that supports your, good practice, strong practice, and so forth. But let's also think about how we can be a part of the discussion as to, well, okay, we've come here, where are we going next? And so I believe that that's a way of demonstrating not just interest, but informed interest, and interest that is actionable on behalf of the students being served in these organizations.
So I'll give you one short statement, and this will be the takeaway for KSB&D. They want to be the statewide resource for students and families that experience deafness and blindness. It's a statewide resource. So and that's really the takeaway. That's what they aspire to be. It's so much more than, here's a school brick and mortar where students with visual impairments go. It's yes, we're here, we're available for students with low vision and or blindness, but we're also the statewide resource for any local school district or family that has a student with low vision or blindness or deaf or hard of hearing. And that really is the aspiration of both schools, is to continue to build that. We do a lot of stuff through our education cooperative network, and so we have those consultants within each of those regions, because we also know that, whether you're from Eastern Kentucky or Western Kentucky, that it's often, culturally, it's easier to have, somebody who knows the land, right, knows the family. So that's how we work through that network to ensure that we have a person that knows the culture of that area of the state. And again, we build these resource libraries. Both of them have extremely strong resource libraries. We provide free evaluations for like low vision or hard of hearing, and parents and families can bring those onto the campus of KSB&D, and we do those for free. And again, we push all that out through local districts, but we through your attention to these schools and being able to share that more broadly, I think would help more of our families across the state be able to access those resources, because sometimes people aren't on the internet trying to figure out where's the statewide resource for blindness. I mean, that's just not, what you're thinking of when you initially realize that you have a child who may be blind. And so, even like this past week with the flooding in Eastern Kentucky, a family reached out and said, put me in contact with somebody that knows something about blindness reached out to my office because we have folks here who have low vision and we don't know what to do in the situation. And so we were able to connect them with folks in the region, you know, who are standing ready to fill that gap.
So Dr. Glass, I think you know where, you know, it's like, all right, if these are the aspirations, if those are our goals, let's start engaging around, well, what's it going to look like when we make progress at the first milestone, at the fifth milestone, and get busy trying to make it happen and have our conversations around where we're going, even as we celebrate every single milestone as a part of the foundation and the infrastructure that we're building on. So, you know, I do think that these organizations represent a really proud accomplishment in and of themselves, a proud heritage, but hey, we can't, that won't feed us for very long. We got to go where we going next. So let's engage around building on the history of, in all of these functions, in each of these areas, and, you know, bring us on to how can we help and, you know, get going. There's no need to languish. And there's no need to feel, if any of us are feeling underappreciated, then we need to take care of that right now. So
I think we just did.
Let's get busy.
I'm reminded that we, as a board, we serve a ceremonial role in support of our state agency schools, and we want to fulfill that to the extent that we can and be visibly and authentically present. We also serve an operational function, and we take care of business in that way. I'm reminded about Robbins leading us through additional budget requests last year that led to some additional funding for our School for the Blind and School for the Deaf that hadn't happened in a while. So we serve that role as well. But I think maybe I'm hearing today that we need to step up in our advocacy role and making sure that perhaps as one of our goals, Meredith, for the coming year, when we set our goals in October, we might think about ways that we can fulfill a broader fiduciary responsibility to our state agency schools in a way that does meet their needs. This is not an attempt to overreach. It's more of an attempt to make sure that we are genuinely supporting the schools in the most tangible way possible moving forward, I think. Dr. Thompson.
Well, I'm going to appreciate you because you probably already know I'm starting my Higher Ed Matters tour this fall, and I'm visiting the ATCs and CTCs.
Yes, sir.
So I am going there already.
Excellent.
And one of the reasons why, Lee, is that we don't have a very good transition numbers to college, and we've got to do better. And one of the things that I've charged the KCTCS folks with doing, and hopefully I'll be there to make the sound loud, is that we've got to set up a better curricular process into it and make it seamless. Right now we advocate, but we don't make it seamless. I mean, I'm not going to use the word compulsory, but if you look at the data, it tells you that, once again, we do a good job there. I'm not saying we don't, but employment goes down fairly quickly afterwards unless they get that next level certificate. That's just the truth. So that's one of the things I wanted to make sure we did this time. I'm doing a year tour, by the way, again, as I did 4 years ago. But this is about helping them to understand that, yes, you can go and you should go, but we need to do our jobs on our ends to provide you a clear path of going. And so I'm looking forward to visiting. I won't get to all of them, obviously, but I wanted to make sure this was on our tour and not just me going to the universities or the colleges, but that in fact we hit many of your schools. I need to be invited to your schools.
We can do that.
Right? So I've actually spoken there a long time ago when I was a professor at EKU in both of the schools, but I'm looking forward to actually visiting there too, but you'll see me a lot.
Thank you. If I may also, as you were speaking, Dr. Young, one of the things that I failed to mention, and I should, is that, you know, we do have this defined organizational structure, But the thing that's really unique about KSB and KSD is that the entire agency really serves kind of as a central office. And so even though these schools are located, within the Office of Special Education and Early Learning, it's not just an OSIL project or work. We have every single office across KDE provides exceptional support and resources and services to these schools, whether it be, technology, instructional support, finances. And so I just want to say that even though that may not be in the structure, it's within the support that the schools receive, and it's exceptional support from all of the offices.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, in the interest of time, we still have two other items under the Operations Committee agenda, and the next one of those is the KETS system. So we'll invite the dynamic, or the trio up here.
Troublesome trio.
Troublesome trio. I couldn't find an alliterative word.
Three Musketeers.
That's it. Better than Stooges.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for your time. I did want to take a little bit of opportunity to introduce the folks with me, and other some folks in this room. Any good team, and I've been a part of a lot of teams, you have experienced hands in it, but you're also getting new talent that comes in. And our organization is one of those. I've been here 30 years as part of this, which has been absolutely wonderful. But I've had also members here of my team here for a long time. Dr. Todd, you were talking about the changeover. We've had very little changeover in decades, which speaks a lot, to it, because any good team, you have a coach, but you got to have the talent to really do special things, and we have that talent in our organization. And you may not realize all the folks that are working for you. Logan Bales, right over here, is with our Office of Education Technology. Not to embarrass him too much, but he is beloved in the Department of Education, going above and beyond the call of duty to help our departmental staff. Megan Osborne over here that took over for Andy. Obviously, Andy was an experienced hand that retired. Megan has stepped up, and we always are thinking about the backups that come in and help organization. Mike Lettingham to my left. I might not know Mike that well, but he's been around just about as long as I have. During the first years of the Kentucky Education Technology System, Mike led the effort to connect every school district to the internet. We did that in 11 months. We were decades, not years, decades ahead of the other states. Mike also led the financial management system going in all those districts. At that time, we had 176 email being started in all 176 districts. Their word processing, that we used Word at the time, their spreadsheets, that all occurred in 11 months. Now think about that, every district having that in place in 1994-95. And KETS is truly the pioneer and national leader in education technology. And it's because of folks like Mike, who now, obviously I wanted to keep Mike, having done that role as leading that, and he's served a variety of roles, and he's one of our division directors, and I consider him part of our chief of staff. Lisa Moore, back here is our policy advisor, has been here just as long as I have. You can see she's been my adult supervision the whole time. It's going to be quite a handful, but been very fortunate to have Lisa Moore. And then part of that new talent is Marty Park. I consider Marty in a lot of ways, if I'm the quarterback, he's the backup quarterback. So if something happened to me, if I couldn't be someplace, Marty is typically the one. But he also plays special teams. He also plays defense, so he's a starter on that. But Marty, a teacher, former teacher, then led what we're doing in Central Kentucky with about 20 districts, and then now is our chief digital officer. So I'm very proud of the team that we have, and it's a mixture of talent. And it is super important as you talk about, the teaching profession. Obviously, my mom's teacher, daughter's teacher, son's a teacher, and has two son-in-laws and teacher. And I understand the importance of having really high-quality teachers in front of students, because I definitely benefited from that. So I want to give you an introduction to that and introduce the folks that are around me that may have questions for them. What you have before you comes before this board since 1992 of approving the Kentucky Education Technology System funds that we have, which is $15.4 million. But I always take this opportunity to educate you on what we're doing education technology-wise, and all the other funding sources that are available. So your action item is really only one, but I want to make you aware of the other funding sources available and also ask for your assistance going forward in an upcoming funding session. So I want to make sure I do that and take this opportunity to do that. So the really great news, and we do have a great story. If you took a look at our KETS timeline, during your time as board members, in just 2.5 years, the things we have done in Kentucky history and national history is pretty amazing. I think of all those things I did in the first 5 years of being part of this, but the things we've done in the last 2.5 years are pretty amazing what we put in place. And I hope you took an opportunity to take a look at that timeline along with our infographic to give you some background, any kind of questions that you may have. Another really good news story besides the things we've done is in all the years this is the most money we've ever had available for education technology going into next school year. It's over $500 million, $500 million. Now, a good part of that is this federal money that evaporates, but it's led to a huge amount of money that's available. And we in the staff note, you can see historically what the money was before the pandemic, and then what it is. So we're going to be in really good shape this school year, in really good shape the next school year. The issue is we have a major funding cliff that happens in the school year after that. It's about a $280 million drop in funding. We spent some good amount of time talking about the disasters of the pandemic, the services we had and the Stillwell Award that was mentioned a little bit earlier. But, during the tornadoes, our services were up and available 100% of the time to those school districts. They could do payroll on time. So as they were struggling, because not only have our services in place, they're all in the cloud. We are the national leader, just not in K-12, in any industry, of having our services. So if something happens to a structure, they can continue on. And so the good news that we could do to those families and to those folks that worked in the school district, they can get paid on time. If you took a look at what's happened in Eastern Kentucky, and I have a lot of family members there, mom still lives there, our internet services and our cloud services were up 100% of the time. They can have access to it. In a lot of these counties, it was the only service that was working. It was the only place they can go to and make a phone call. And that did not drop before and during and after that pandemic. That's not by luck that happens. That's a lot of good planning that goes into place. So these services that we put in place just not help in the classroom, they help in other circumstances way beyond the classroom of importance. And so we want to make sure you keep that in mind as you're going forward with a budget request. We're very happy and happy for the other parts that you had in top 5 priorities that you had in the past for career and technical education. Definitely needed that. It was great to see that funding. KSD and KSB, they definitely desperately needed that for years for that to happen. Transportation and kindergarten. But we feel we're now in the queue for it to be a top 5 priority for the board. And obviously it needs to be a top 5 priority for like the K groups, KASA and KSS and KSBA, and working with legislators one-on-one in the governor's office. But sometimes when you provide all these services, they can be taken for granted. I just want to make sure our service, before the funding happened with the federal funds, had been cut pretty severely. And with the KETS funds and our internet funds. What we've done during the pandemic, we've used some of those funds to beef up the internet services to school districts. Those go away. So when all that money goes away, we are not going to be in a good position. We're at that desperate part with the legislature, making it a top priority. Of getting the funding cuts reestablished and going above and beyond that so we can maintain these services. And like I say, sometimes you get penalized for finding a way and not having stuff drop. But we have reached the point, there is no way to find the way when this money runs out. So we have a lot more of a good story than a concerning story available to you. So I just wanted to make sure you're aware of, like I say, the good news, but also what we're asking this to board, because sometimes it get lost. Of all the things that'll happen between now and then, this is so super important not to let this get lost. This has been a great investment of taxpayer funds. We have been very frugal and maximized what we have. And so I think it's a good message that we can go forth with the public and with the legislature as far as making it a priority. So we'll handle any kind of questions you may have. I have, once again, a lot of adult supervision with me that can answer that too. As well.
Excellent. Thank you so much, David. And Robin, if you'll help us with Meredith capture the funding cliff question for our ABR discussion as well. Just as a reminder to the board, though, today we're focusing on this current year's implementation of the KETS system in the amount of $15.4 million. So at some point I'll entertain that motion, but let's take this time to talk to David about the broader conversation around the future of funding and technology as well. So what questions might you have?
There are 2 points that you made on this written material. One was increase the KETS annual allocation of $25 million per year. The second one was help properly address the people side of ed tech. Can you expound on that? I think I understood the budget.
Let's start with the last one first. What we found during the pandemic is districts bought a lot of stuff and services, but they didn't pay the people to go along with them. I mean, think about any kind of business you would have. If you had a small grocery store and all of a sudden you expanded it to 10 times the size, you would not have just one person at that desk working it. You would have more. And that's what we've done. If you really want to keep your services up and reliable and a good investment, you got to have the talent and the people there to do it. And the number of people for the size of deployment is really tiny. Now, we did a good job with our digital learning coaches. These are folks that show teachers how to maximize technology instruction, also staff as well. What's that?
Yeah, they're teachers.
They're teachers, yeah. So these are folks that really help, and we saw, a 2 or 3 times increase in those kind of positions, but we didn't see in the technology positions that keep it up and operational. So that was a problem before the pandemic, and it's been even much more of a problem now. Now, we understood why they didn't, because the federal funds just really were temporary. And so they were hesitant on funding that with temporary funds. Going up to the top one is, for example, a lot of devices bought during the pandemic, during the time that this funding session will come, they will go end of life. So it was brand new then, but you're now hitting a 4 or 5 year time frame where they'll need to be replaced. So the devices will need to be replaced as well. That's part of the services, the network infrastructure need to be replaced. So it's asking to restore the cuts to both what happened to the internet cut, and everybody took cuts during the housing market crash. But what didn't happen is they didn't get restored. And so we were hoping in this past session it would get restored. It did not. But we now are reaching a crisis point where we're going to be fine, like I said, the next 2 years. Next 2 school years, fine. Not fine after that. So this is just to kind of get on the radar screen of raising the KETS baseline back at least to 25 million, if not more. That's extremely frugal numbers. That's restoring a cut. We have not got a cost of living increase since 1992. Now think about that. Nothing. People get paid. Now think of what other service you have that's not got a cost of living increase since 1992. And we've been making it work, but we're at the point to where you can't pay people the same rates that you did in 1992, or you're going to lose them. Obviously, you're going to lose those services.
And when David talks to a cost of living increase, he's talking to the program. And the cost of the program really in a totality, not specifically to individuals, but the people side of it as well as the cost of the products, the deliverables, the technology itself.
So we tried to really simplify it and say these are the 2. I mean, we could go into granular detail with it.
I guess one follow-up question: is number 2 covered by the number 1 increase financially, or are you saying that number 2 is a secondary issue?
Yeah, it would help. It would help with that.
Yeah. I know we're not looking at future budgets now, but
yeah.
The interesting thing about the people side of it, obviously, and we're all dealing with this, is this was a challenge before the pandemic, and as we went through the pandemic, we have a change in the workforce environment, and specifically in the technology industry for sure. I know it's it's all in all areas, but for sure in the technology area and just the workforce in general, this challenge becomes even more. And again, I know that's across the board for all areas, but certainly something that we're observing.
And we give guidance. Marty, you part of the effort to create some guidance in districts about staffing needs that they need, right?
We actually have a published study that was originally done prior to the pandemic, which calls out the crisis point in education technology for the people side of implementing or maximizing effective uses of buying the stuff. And just, it's more important now than ever, as more stuff has been purchased.
And I think we're all aware of just not maximizing it, but making it safe. So it is a massive attack of cyber attacks that are happening on across the country, but particularly attacking education organizations. It's like I've never seen before. And it is, if you take a look at all industries, education is being the focus of attack far more than any other industry. And so if you don't have the right...
Healthcare?
Yeah. Pardon?
More than healthcare?
Yes.
Banking?
Yeah. Now, part of that is all this federal money that's coming in, and so they're trying to see how can I game somebody to do that and jam up the services and make it unreliable and just try to cause chaos. But it's like nothing I've seen. So you got to have the right players in place now, not to encourage any cyber attackers, but if you take a look at the other 49 states, we did not run into what they ran into. That's not by luck. That's not challenging the cyber attackers out there, by the way. I don't want anybody watching this, but the things we had in place prevented that from being a major issue in Kentucky that you saw in the other 49 states. And so that's going to continue on as they see that's a lucrative kind of market to get into. And the reason is also education, we're a helping group. We want to help a lot. And there's trusting nature. And so it's taking advantage of people's trust. And just because we have so many schools that are out there, they just try to work on them one-on-one. But good.
There's also something very interesting with student accounts, and the fact that a first grade student does not get a background check for many, many years, and so that's an active student account. So from a cybersecurity perspective, securing our students.
So if they get a Social Security number and they get that, they can use that for years undetected. So there's
another reason why education.
They're up to no good with it, but it's a problem. But you have to have the right players in place to make sure it's maximized, but that huge investment, and also secured as best you can.
One final point, Dr. Todd, you mentioned about the people side conversation that we're having. Superintendents asked years ago, we have a formula for most of everything that we do. We have a formula for bus drivers. We have a formula for our cafeteria help. What about education technology, especially with the investment, so that we maximize it the best we can? And that's where the people side study initiated, was to try to help our schools and districts come up with that formula of what that can look like in order to be successful.
And also, we were having technology staff unfairly criticized. And so the analogy I use now some of you, this will age me, the Lucille ball in the chocolate factory, where it comes out slow. And I know there's a group in here who won't know what that means. But that's what happened initially when we started out. You had 6 computers every student. They went 3 to 1. Then it went 1 to 1. And then and they had the same number of staffing that was available. Same thing on a baseball field. If you only had a pitcher out there, not even a catcher outfield, and that's the only player you had, well, you get beat 100 to nothing, very quickly in the first inning. And so superintendents were being critical of their technology staff, and they were doing superhuman things to keep it up and operational. So we wanted these superintendents to understand, you have a tiny number of people doing this part. So either you got to reduce the number of devices you have and stuff, or raise the number of people you have if you want it to be a reliable and a good experience. And so that was a big part of the people study.
As a former superintendent, and we think about, so many years ago when we just first started really into technology, then we hired our technology people, and then like I said, all this thing, it's just getting over and over and over added to it. So it's unbelievable. Most everything's technology, but you don't have many more people than you had back when it first started, and it makes it really difficult. And I think there's no question that we need more people working in technology in our schools, but it all comes down to funding. And when superintendents hear that, they'll say, "Oh, we're going to get the funding." Yeah. But there's no question about it that we need more people out there in our schools and working with the technology, because that's what it's all about. That's what the world's all about.
And think about how it's changed too since we began. Is all the fun, almost everything you do in a district is involving technology in some way, which has gone to staff. So your phone systems are now coming through them. Your heating and air conditioning systems, are digitized now. Your security systems are coming through them. And so they've taken on these additional things besides the typical instructional and communication administrative. It's been added on, and the staffing has stayed the same. And so that's a big part of it is if we don't address that, then the experience will start to be bad for our teachers and our staff if we don't do something on the people side. But the services that we're offering, if we do not do that from the state level, from the KD level are going to suffer if we don't get the funding reestablished.
Excellent. Dr. Robinson?
I'll offer a motion, please, that we approve the commissioner's recommendation that we approve the school year 22-23 KET operational management resources allocation of 15.4 million in accordance with KRS 157.665 sub 3 to help address the Kentucky K-12 education technology operational management needs.
I second
Excellent.
that motion.
Thank you. Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All right, thank you. And we look forward to further discussion around the future funding needs. Thank you.
Oh, and this info, the information that you included was just very illuminating, very.
Excellent, thank you. Yes, and then we have request for approval pursuant to 702 KAR 4:050, Robin, regarding Pulaski County Schools.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. This agenda item is a request from the Pulaski County Schools for approval to purchase 42 acres for the construction of a 400-student preschool through 5th grade elementary school. This school would replace Burnside Elementary. And the reason it's in front of you today as an action item is, if you'll remember, there are certain regulatory requirements that districts have to follow in order to purchase property. One of those is found in 702 KAR 4:050, and they must request approval from the Kentucky Board of Education anytime the purchase price and site acquisition costs would exceed 10% of the project. And so that's why we're before you today. The staff note does include the sort of the calculations from a financial standpoint of where this would put the district. The district has done a really good job in sharing information with us about the sites that they've looked at and considered. As you can see in the staff note, the site acquisition is below the fair market value, so the site acquisition is good. It is where they have to do massive excavation and soil prep to actually establish the elementary school. So we are before you today and recommending approval of the site acquisition and purchase price of this property for the replacement of Burnside Elementary School.
Excellent.
I'll make a motion.
Chance, any follow-up, Dr. Todd?
I don't have any questions. It once again points out the issue of trying to live with that 10%, given you have such a different state we deal with, Eastern Kentucky, Western Kentucky, high property values in Fayette County and so forth. So I really applaud the staff for digging into this and just seeing that these cost overruns, if you were to call them that, are documented and are reasonable. So I think motions are very much in favor.
Make a motion for them to be able to purchase this land with above the 10%.
Excellent. We have a motion. We have a second.
I'll second it.
Thank you from Mrs. McCrary. Any further discussion or questions for Robin? All those in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We did have some guests from Pulaski County that are here in the audience. I promised they wouldn't have to speak unless you all had really hard questions. But we appreciate them coming and being here with us today.
Excellent.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
All right. Hopefully we'll be able to return to our committee format at our October meeting. But thanks for the work around Meredith and Dr. Todd and Holly on that full board discussion today. I'm happy at this point to turn it over to the Commissioner for the presentation of the 2022 Grissom Award for Innovation in Special Education.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The late Dr. Johnny Grissom served at KDE in the role of Associate Commissioner for the Office of Special Instructional Services. She provided steadfast commitment, service, and leadership, striving to help all students achieve at high levels regardless of their disabilities. This award is given in the spring of each year, or summer in this case, to a Kentuckian or a Kentucky organization to honor outstanding dedication to improving student achievement for students with disabilities. Criteria for the award include leadership or implementation of innovative practice in curriculum, instruction, or assessment that leads to improved learning, post-secondary, or workforce outcomes for students with learning or behavioral differences, and district or schools demonstrating significant improvement or sustained excellence in learning or behavior outcomes for students with learning or behavioral differences. At this time, it is my honor to announce the winners of the 2022 Grissom Award for Innovation in Special Education. Dr. Barbara Washington, Professor and Chair of Adolescent Career and Special Education Department at Murray State University, and Alexis Patterson and Janine Mosher from Person First Academy. I'd like to take a few minutes to share what their nominators said about their contributions. For Dr. Barbara Washington, Dr. Washington has championed outstanding leadership efforts throughout her career in special education since 1980. Barbara's specialties include students with moderate and severe disabilities of all age groups. Students with learning and behavioral disabilities benefited from her creative curriculum and assessment implementations, allowing successful transition from high school to community living and employment. Dr. Washington held high expectations for all her students and provided individualized and differentiated instruction for each student on her caseload. She advocated for and taught all of her students to advocate for themselves because she believed failure is not an option and every child deserves to be educated. If there was anyone who deserves to be honored for contributions to the field of special education, it is Dr. Barbara Harmon Washington. She's a blessing in disguise and a fierce advocate for all special education students. Dr. Washington, would you come up and join us at the front here? Oh, she's not here. Oh. Oh, okay. Well, yes.
Dr. Washington. She's recently retired. Her husband had some health problems and she's doing that. But what a wonderful capstone to an amazing career. She was an amazing person to work with and had so much passion for special education.
I love it.
So we will miss her so much at Murray State, and I'm so proud to know her and for her to receive this award.
That's lovely. Thank you, Holly.
We have an award for her that we'll figure out how to get to her. So.
Maybe you can help.
So turning to Alexis Patterson and Janine Mosher from Person First Academy. Miss Alexis Patterson and Mrs. Janine Mosher have been instrumental in organizing and implementing an academic and work program that integrates the community and workforce for students with severe and moderate disabilities. The Person First program is set up to serve 4 different career academies such as food, service, clothing and retail, office, technical, and janitorial landscaping. The program has set up numerous volunteer and career positions for students to graduate into after work with the business and organizations to generalize the work skills necessary for success to be sustainable after high school. I see that my notes now say Dr. Washington is unable to join us here today. We have made arrangements for the award to convey the award along to her. We are honored to have our other very worthy recipients, Alexis Patterson and Janine Mosher, here with us today, and I'd like to invite them forward to share a few words.
Yay.
I just wanted to say thank you. After looking into the Grisham Award, it's quite an honor to be even considered. I know it is something that we are very passionate about in Madison County. It is a team of people behind us. I mean, it may have been our brainchild, however, it has taken years of foundational building, a standard of excellence, and an expectation of always reaching the highest level of potential. And it is so great to work with a group of people that are as passionate about it as I am.
Just to piggyback off of what Janine mentioned, our program truly seeks to provide opportunities for students with moderate to severe disabilities a chance at competitive work. We believe that that is a part of the holistic transition process. We provide systematic, evidence-based instruction for our students day in and day out, and it's truly improving their lives. You know, the work is vast, but the harvest has been plentiful since we've started, and we are just so incredibly honored and excited to be here today to accept this award. So thank you so much.
Okay. Well, congratulations again to Dr. Washington.
Is that awards?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes. And to Ms. Patterson and Ms. Mosher, on behalf of the Kentucky Board of Education and our staff here at the Kentucky Department of Education, we want to personally thank you for your exceptional leadership. We do have some awards to present to you. Chair Young usually takes these photographs. She's recovering from COVID, so she's not going to do that. But I'd be delighted to have a photograph with you to do that.
One on each side, maybe. I was going to step out as well, but I think I better become. It's going to be a mass exodus. Oh, I don't think Dr. Robinson's leaving.
Step out, we'll be all right.
Congratulations.
Back to you, Chair Young.
All right, thanks. Excellent. As a former colleague of Johnny Grissom, it is a delight to be able to recognize you for your good work today. Thank you so much. Keep up those good efforts on behalf of our students with moderate and severe disabilities. Thank you. At this point, we'll turn our attention to action items, and the first of those regards 704 KAR 3:535, full-time enrolled online virtual and remote learning programs. And with us today, we'll invite back up Associate Commissioner David Couch, Chief Digital Officer Marty Park, along with Robin Kinney, Associate Director, and Dr. Thomas Woods Tucker, KBE Chief Academic Officer Mickey Ray. All will present proposed regulation, and we've had a chance to review these and talk some at work session yesterday, but I'll ask the team to share briefly, and then we'll move forward into consideration.
Great. So once again, this was a team effort really across different offices, and even before the pandemic, obviously, we were working together, and then during the pandemic, and then obviously we've allowed a waiver to occur, which is going to be for this next school year. That's in place, but we really were at the point of needing to have something else in place besides a temporary waiver for the next school year. I always tell folks, whatever they're doing with technology involved with it, what is the best practice you do without technology, and then lay it on top of it. And when folks were going one-to-one, I said, what is your educational plan first? Then lay technology on top of it, and that's going to be a bigger win. So the same thing is with this, is what are the best practices for remote instruction? Follow those best practices, and then what are special technology considerations you got to lay on top of that? Which I think has been a good, thoughtful effort. What is good practice, and in the work session yesterday about the whole child, think through that, and then think through the unique parts that technology will bring on top of this. This is not going to be a high percentage item. This is a 1 or 2% of the students. This is not to be an area that really grows beyond that. I don't suspect you will see students taking maybe a course here and there virtual, but not full-time, year-round kind of option. And so, as you heard yesterday, and I thought it was great from Bavel, or actually from Bullitt County, of course, Bavel was there as well, is how they've implemented, and the grade levels they've implemented, and the thoughtfulness that goes into that, to trying to really make sure this is a good experience it can be, and is in-person-like as it can be, and the personal touch as it can be putting in place. Obviously, with this one, it is a parent choice and a student choice, so it's completely optional. The same thing with the school district. They have the option of doing it or not doing it. One of the big changes in this, and we'll talk about the detail, is, without this, there's still grades 5 to 12, and it's performance-based. So this opens up the option for K through 5, K through 4, and a kind of attendance-based approach. It takes just away from the requirement just on a pass-fail. Districts will be interested in this just from a financial aspect, and we can talk about they want this option as well to be put in place. The other part is, I think it's important, as you kind of heard the different options yesterday. If this is not permitted, those parents go find a way. During the pandemic, there's a small percentage of students that excelled in this environment. They don't work well in a traditional classroom setting, and it's finding a pathway for those students. There are students that normally would have dropped out. This is a way to keep them connected and help them cross the finish line. There are students that are working, and this allows them to, in off hours, continue that. There are students that are traveling. So this is not a huge percentage, but it's a pathway to the finish line for a high percentage of those. And Marty and team has, Marty, our Chief Digital Officer, can talk about, the 9 sections that we have in it and delivering high quality. I think you heard that yesterday. I think Bullitt County did an excellent job of talking in the diligence they have of trying to make sure it's high quality experience. So I'll turn it over to the rest of the team here to go forth with it.
So really wanted an opportunity to provide just additional question and answer per the proposed regulatory language. A couple highlights that I would like to call out. Again, as you heard yesterday through the work session, if we permit this opportunity, and positively speaking, I would say when we permit this opportunity, we're providing elements and constructs of high quality for our districts to establish programs that align with those elements of high quality. I said yesterday, and I'll continue to stand behind, I think if you take this language that we are proposing as a state leadership team and stack it up against any other state, it is extremely strong. And I think we can stand behind that to provide experiences for our students that are top notch for the 1 or 2% of our students who need this type of opportunity. Again, just to push on briefly, this is not really an education technology conversation at all. Learning is at the center. Technologies, specifically in education technologies, should support human sensibilities, human development, and human learning. They should not get in the way of or create barriers for. And I think what we believe, what you see in the proposed regulatory language, provides those constructs for districts to design on, combined with a funding mechanism that works. And that aligns with the partnerships that our superintendents have shared with us so far for the school districts who are designing these programs. I want to give a quick high five to Mr. Ben Maynard, who is with us and on our team, who has driven a lot of this work and is our direct connect with our school district programs, and has worked shoulder to shoulder through pandemic and creation of some of these programs. But we do have programs that have been around for quite some time that we've leaned on to develop this regulatory language.
And Dr. Clark, if I may add one thing, if you look at the draft regulation before you today versus the existing waiver, we have heard you and made intentional efforts to support the social emotional learning needs and mental health needs of students who would be participating K-12. So we can talk about the specifics around that as needed today, but I wanted to assure you that that has been addressed in the draft regulation.
And hopefully yesterday, the board and the community, school community here in Kentucky were able to see that that was captured, the emphasis on social emotional learning, mental health, and obviously what really gets this going is the emphasis on the whole child. I think that's the most important emphasis there, looking at the whole child. And certainly I want to thank the board, the commissioner, and our folks here at KDE for their unwavering commitment to the whole child. And when you have these continuous conversations about the importance of the whole child and mental health, we hope that one day that becomes part of what we do, part of our culture whenever we're establishing an environment, whether it's online or a traditional in-classroom environment.
So the Office of Finance and Operations role, as David suggested, it really is a cross-agency effort in this regard. Most of our role is found in Section 8 regarding student attendance and how we will actually account for our students. You'll see a lot of the provisions in Section 8 really mirror what we require during the waiver process. So how we're going to take attendance, whether that is at the higher levels where they're taking it course by course, or if you're taking it 2 times a day, 3 hours apart for our elementary students. There will be the same provisions about truancy required. So it looks very similar to an in-person type requirement. And of course, we will conduct audits as we do for attendance, and requires the district to also come up with certain policies on their own. So these provisions in Section 8 should look very familiar to you from our waiver actions that we've taken in the past.
Excellent. Dr. Robinson.
I do want to commend the team for helping us get to where we want it to go, and working with us to create a regulatory support for virtual learning for all learners, K-12. I think that as we've worked together on this, I've really been assured and gratified to realize your understanding of the whole of the education process. This is not about making content accessible to early learners. This is about making learning accessible to early learners. That's right. And so I appreciate the opportunity to work with you on this. I would further appreciate updates from time to time on some of the challenges and the issues. What are we learning further as more school districts contemplate this kind of service? And what are some of the questions and challenges that we might address as we seek to make these virtual learning experience available to those students who can really benefit from it? And in doing so in a way that addresses all the needs of these learners. And, I've been very clear, my particular interest in this instance is our new experience with very early learners.
That's right.
And recognizing all the social emotional development supports that would be available in a in-person context that will require some real thoughtful consideration in a virtual learning context. So it's been a pleasure. Thank you for bringing this to this day with an approach to this that permits our further learning and further and incorporating lessons from challenges and how to support school districts in making it happen.
Excellent. Thank you. Ms. McCrary.
Quickly, just my initial perusal of this drafted piece, I could see the teamwork that went into this. It truly was a village that jumped out from the pages. So first of all, I'd like to applaud you for that. Second of all, the way that you had the presentation yesterday, I'm going to say was a pretty brilliant strategy, because when I went back and visited this, after the presentation yesterday, I had an even stronger sense of confidence within the regulations. So I also applaud your strategy.
Get it. Busted. All right, thank you. I would entertain a motion to approve. Sorry, lost my script.
New regulation.
The new regulation, 702. KAR 704, KAR 3:535.
So moved.
Dr. Robinson, do we have a second?
Second.
Dr. Todd, thank you. Any further discussion or questions for the panel? Hearing none, all those in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No? Excellent. Thank you guys so much. I heard Marty say yesterday that the questions made you better because the board wanted to know that, and I appreciate that, and especially Dr. Robinson for bringing those questions to the table, and then your diligent response is much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Robin, I think you get to stay.
I get to stay.
She loves this part. She wants to just stay at the table.
I was going to say I'm going to invite Matt, and here's Matt.
I would just add the note that the commissioner whispered, and that was a year-long heavy lift on the part of that team, and that effort has truly paid off. I think we have a great platform from which to launch moving forward, and we know that there will be twists and turns along the way, but building that steady platform is the best way to start. All right. Associate Commissioner Kinney is here to talk to us about pupil attendance. This is an amendment to 702 KAR 7:125.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This amendment is, now that you've just passed the regulation that allows for that remote online virtual learning to take place, districts, of course, will be interested in how they get funded and how they can access funding related to that. So the attendance regulation correlates to how defined attendance manners in which SEEK then follows if you follow in accordance with the regulation on attendance, how people attend. So as we looked at doing the remote and virtual learning, we knew that we had to amend our attendance reg to allow that virtual learning to count for SEEK. But in opening the attendance reg, there were other things that we needed to kind of clean up and revise that are not really related to that, but related to certain legislative action that has occurred. So I'm going to briefly walk you through the provisions of the attendance reg that we are recommending for amendment. And we'll start on page 3 of your regulation. If I can just kind of refer you there, and we'll kind of jump through these. Page 3, we just really changed a statutory citation to home hospital. It does not change anything about the current way we fund home hospital at all. We're just correlating the numbering of that citation and making it correct. If we go to page 4, at the top of the page, you'll see the reference where we have now included the ability to fund through attendance of the full-time online virtual and remote learning program. So there's where districts can see that they'll get funded for that. It is different than what we've been allowed in the past. We still have performance-based learning funding, and that still occurs. But this actually rolls right into ADA, just like an in-person student, whereas performance-based learning, that funding continues to come at the conclusion of that coursework and based upon sort of a pass-fail, whether you get your funding. So districts, of course, are more interested in treating this more like the in-person opportunity for funding. Also on page 4, we have stricken from the regulation provisions that were applicable only to school year 21-22 about pupils that were in quarantine. So because that school year is behind us, we have deleted that. Also on page 4, we heard from districts sometimes if you have a bus or a vehicle that is transporting students to our schools and they're late, those students have been counted as tardy. And so through no fault of the student or their family or how they're getting to school, we have clarified that those students do not get counted as tardy if it is a district vehicle that is transporting them. The next section appears on page 8. And this relates to non-resident pupils. With the passage of House Bill 563 a couple of sessions ago, we are now in the situation where districts no longer enter into agreements with each other about the transfer of non-resident students. Instead, districts will be creating their own policies based upon capacity and ability to receive those non-resident students. And so we have kind of retained, we've put in a couple of provisions to allow for reporting to each other so that when non-resident students come to a district and are received there, we want to make sure that the DPPs in the resident districts know that that's where those students have gone. DPPs are interested in knowing that so that they know that they are not keeping up with those students for that year. And they're also, we're also asking for them to report students that are children or in the guard of employees of those districts, because statutorily they are permitted to attend those non-resident schools as well. And those, again, likewise, DPPs are interested in knowing that. Let's see, I think next we go to Section 11. And Section 11, we've added some provisions for withdrawal and enrollment codes related to charter schools. We have received through the General Assembly, through House Bill 9, there's a funding mechanism now for charter schools. And as a result, we will need to insert coding into our Infinite Campus system, so withdrawal and enrollment codes. Separate action will come through separate regulation actually defining how the funding will actually work for the charter schools, which is separate and apart. This is just for the attendance piece so that we can actually code. And I think that's about it, but happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Excellent. Thanks for walking us through that, Robin. Board members, what questions might you have of Robin or Matt? I think it was pretty clear. Yeah. All right, hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve amendments to 702 KAR 7:125.
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. McCrary.
Second.
Second from Ms. Adams. Any further discussion? Thank you both. All those in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, at this point, we'll welcome Chief Strategic Officer, Performance. I'm going to get it one of these days. Performance Officer Karen Dodd to the table regarding our strategic plan update.
Good afternoon. So David Couch told me that I have to identify myself as a OET alumni with distinction.
There should be a coin with that on it.
So I'm going to go ahead and assume that that's summa cum laude and that my Stillwell coin is in the mail.
There you go.
All right. So today I'm just going to share with you our strategic plan, how we have changed the look of that plan. So typically I have brought to you what we were calling a plan on a page, separate document. What we've done is we have put this onto a web page, so it'll be very easy for everybody to find, easily pull up, easy for us to edit at any time as well. So we thought this would cut down on some confusion. So it does look different, but all of the data that we've talked about before is there. So at the top, you'll see that we start off with the vision statement of United We Learn. We spell out the 3 big ideas there. And as we scroll down, we have what we're calling our why now, which is the same vision that the board has had in place for quite some time. Every student empowered and equipped to pursue a successful future. Below that is our mission to create a broad partnerships to provide leadership and support to ensure success for every student. And then we spell out our 3 strategic priorities within the strategic plan. So access and opportunity, authentic engagement and partnership, and operational excellence, all which flow directly down from those 3 big ideas. How we'll take action. Here, first of all, we explain what we mean by perspectives. So we have the 4 perspectives that we've always had in our plan, and I always like to start at the bottom with agency capacity. So we measure internally what we're doing. That really makes this into a balanced scorecard for any of you who are into strategic planning. Internal processes, financial stewardship, and ultimately student outcomes, or anything that we measure along the lines of customer and stakeholders. Below that, you'll see the actual chart, which really was the plan on a page. This was the guts of the plan on a page. So we have all the objectives there. Those are the things that we want to measure and improve over time. And then the specific initiatives all listed there. And again, these can be updated at any time as we move forward. Below that, we have a graphic of how all of this kind of plays out. So at the very top, you see again those 3 big ideas. Below it flow the objectives for the, the strategic priorities are in green, and then the lightest green are the objectives. Going back up to the top, because I'm sure you're wondering where did the measures go, you can click on strategic dashboard from here, and you don't have to click on that. We've seen that a couple of times now. But that will also be able to be changed. That's where we've worked with KY Stats. They've put that together for us, but we know that as we move forward and really start getting into all of these new initiatives, that we could very well want to measure different things. So we also consider that a living document, and very, very likely that the look and feel of that dashboard will also change over time as we decide that we want to measure things in a different way, maybe combine some of the things that we're doing now into some measures, or just come up with new measures. So that was it. That's all I have for you.
You're back in the chair seat.
Yeah, exactly. And just in the nick of time.
It's interesting to see it evolve. That's where we are.
Thank you so much, Karen. Are there questions, comments?
It's interesting to see this evolve.
Yeah.
And the time and energy that goes into it.
So, as we move to the web-based and fill in the data and so forth, how are we going to drive people, and how will you use it, and how do you expect the public to use this?
No, that's a great question. Definitely working with the communications team. So one of the things that Tony and I just were talking about on Friday is putting together a communications plan that is really around our whole strategic plan. So how do we need to get that out and start boosting that? As you are aware, we have work in there from the Pritchard Committee, so those family-friendly certificates, that's something that we're measuring that is through partnership, and so they're really counting on us to promote that work as well. And so we've been doing some featured articles on the district, or the schools who are family-friendly. So that's one of the ways that we're really trying to promote this, by really looking at the work that's going on in the plan and then continually sending them back to the page or back to the strategic dashboard so that they can see, here's what's happening and here's everything that's happening.
Right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Questions, comments? Well, this is a work in progress. We appreciate the continued updates.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Thank you. So the next item on our agenda is to hear from our Teacher of the Year. Willie, come forward. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your service, and we know we're in for a treat. Please share your reflections on your experience.
Something nice. I didn't know. First, good afternoon, members of the board, Commissioner Glass. Thank you all so much. It's an honor to get to speak to you. I'm Willie Edward Taylor Carver Jr., the 2022 Kentucky Teacher of the Year. And I really want to tell you all, thank you sincerely for supporting this program and allowing me the opportunity to speak to you today about what it has meant and continues to mean to me. I'm gay and Appalachian, and I share these parts of myself first and foremost because my students literally ask me to, because they sometimes feel unseen and unheard, and I want to honor their request to be more seen and more heard. This program has been and continues to be just that, being seen and being heard, hearing and seeing, and not just LGBTQ or Appalachian students, but all groups of students and teachers, Black, brown, white, Hispanic, Asian American, rich, poor, Native. I have seen and met, have heard and attempted to amplify the voice of countless people who have shared needs and concerns as members of groups, and people who have individual needs and concerns. Since all of us are different from others, all of us want to be seen and heard as individuals, and all of us want to contribute positively to our communities, our state, and our world. This year, I have done just that. I have spoken, collaborated on projects, and worked in person or virtually in 22 states, as well as the United Kingdom and France. I have spoken or will soon speak as a speaker or keynote at dozens of conferences, including the National Conference at the American Federation of Teachers, have been interviewed by local, state, and national news outlets, including ABC, NBC, NPR Kentucky, Ed Weekly, KET, and Le Monde, which is the largest newspaper in France. I have been proud of and outspoken about the brilliance and beauty of Kentuckians, as well as the needs of people living in Kentucky. I have told the story of my students, and I am proud that people wanted to hear it. That story has been told by national and international venues, including those listed above, as well as NPR National, Advocate, which is the world's most widely disseminated LGBTQ source, the Daily Mail out of the UK, which has an audience of 218 million visitors per month, and an upcoming professional development at KET. I also got to speak to President and Dr. Biden. I told them about a young boy in Kentucky whose father reached out to me the night before I met them, actually, in pain, because that boy was not accepted when he chose to share parts of himself to his classmates and teachers. And so I advocated for Kentucky students that I don't know in the precious moments I got with an American president, because I'm a Kentucky teacher, and that's what we do. We fight for our state's most valuable resource, our children. And sitting on my kitchen table right now is a package I have yet to open from the American president to a young boy in Kentucky that I haven't met. I spoke before Congress, before the Subcommittee on Human Rights, before the same U.S. Representative Raskin, currently presiding over the January the 6th Committee, alongside the world's leading experts on human rights and Ruby Bridges, and I told my students' story. I've been contacted by literally thousands of people who have sent words of encouragement and commented on the strength of Kentucky students, have received hundreds of letters, messages, and postcards from people all around the world, including an entire middle school class in Connecticut and teachers in France, England, and China. I have spoken, too, on paper, and people want to hear. This year, I've been published by the American Federation of Teachers, the Courier-Journal, the Lexington Herald-Leader, Education Post, the Moorhead Writing Project in conjunction with the Hyman School, the Council Chronicle, Kentucky Teacher, Narrative 4, and the Washington Post. I even got the opportunity to publish a book. My advocacy led me to getting to meet lots of Appalachian artists, either online or in person, people like Chris Offutt and Silas House, to me even becoming friends with some authors like Nima Avashia, Robert Gipe, and Kentucky Poet Laureate Crystal Wilkinson, the latter two of whom encouraged me in my creative fiction that looks at the role of education in the life of Kentucky children, and fiction for which I have a tentative offer for publication as of yesterday. Also, I went to Space Camp. Have I mentioned Space Camp? Because Space Camp rocks. And that's my segue into what this experience has really meant. Yes, there has been voice, but voice is just the medium of what matters. It is the access point to what is important, people. Space Camp was and will be one of the most interesting moments of my life for a lot of reasons, and those all revolve around people, and most importantly, students and teachers. Space Camp is actually really hard. There are lots of numbers. There are obstacle courses, there are 14-hour days, and it's hot because it's Alabama and it's July. And there are issues in any system that exists, including Space Camp, issues that we're all facing together, issues that deal with how we relate to people in those systems. And I watch these beautiful people around me, these state teachers of the year, be reduced to tears, these grown adults, more than a few times during this cool, but albeit goofy cool kind of experience. And when we talked about those tears, teacher after teacher from state after state, teachers of every imaginable background, geographical location, skin color, gender, or sexual orientation, of every socioeconomic status, they all talked about what this program could or would mean to their kids. And they were brought to tears. Tears because of issues their kids might face there, and tears because of issues their kids might face in trying to get there. A place that is wildly innovative and that every kid should have access to. Love pervades education. It is why we are here. We do not just deliver content to the kids in the room, we sit with them. We get to know their struggles, their fears, their hopes, and their ambitions. And we do everything in our power, sitting right beside of them, to get them to their wildest hopes, to transform their lenses so that we might transform their lives. Teaching is sitting with our students and families, not standing in front of them. Teaching is being willing to sit through the tough moments that will happen on the path to improvement. Teaching is helping make that change happen, which means speaking up to get what our kids need, taking away what harms them, and changing those systems that need changing. This has been what I have learned. It is why it has been my deepest, most humbling honor to speak not only with teachers across the Commonwealth and the nation, but to speak with students across Kentucky. I am proud of Kentucky students. I am hopeful for Kentucky students. I am in awe of Kentucky students, and I'd like to share a few moments that stand out. I attended a literacy event in Frankfort, and afterwards a student from Louisville literally came up to me to thank me for speaking up on issues that mattered to her and might not be as evident in Eastern Kentucky. She then asked me what needs students in Eastern Kentucky might have that she doesn't know about so that she could help better advocate for them. She taught me that caring begets caring and showed me how much our students care. I spoke at the Ad Rising conference, and a very shy high school student from rural central Kentucky handed me a small drawing of eyes and a smile with the words, "Thank you for speaking," written on it. They told me in almost a whisper that me saying the word gay was the first time they'd ever heard a teacher say it. And I tucked their drawing into my folder. The day that I spoke before Congress, which was nerve-wracking, their note fell out by chance, and the words took on a lot more weight. They taught me that students are watching teachers, they're watching what we say, and they're watching what we don't say. Finally, I interviewed 20 kids in rural Kentucky about their experiences with life in school. When I asked them what they wanted to be when they grew up, all of them had big dreams: doctor, nurse, teacher, truck driver. But when I asked why, 19 of the 20 told me about things they were afraid of, because they didn't want to be on drugs, because they didn't want to be homeless, because they didn't want to be too poor for food. 19 out of 20 students structure their future this way. So I began to ask them how we can change that, how we can move away from fear and towards hope. A 16-year-old student, a girl who had recently lost her father in an accident, offered up this answer: honor. Can we honor the pains that have caused us to be afraid by working towards a better life? Her words sunk deep into me, and they have formed the core of every speech I've ever given, every interview, every publication, every moment of my sabbatical as the 2022 Kentucky Teacher of the Year. Only she was smarter than me and put it in much nicer words. We sit with our kids, we hear our kids, and if we're lucky enough to be in my position, thanks to you all, we honor their stories by being brave enough to tell them. And, as that young girl said, that honor helps us hope more brightly and with less fear. For that, I have you and the Kentucky Department of Education to thank. This program is not simply an opportunity for a teacher to have a platform. It has been the opportunity for a teacher to be the steward of his students' voices, to do the sometimes painful but always beautiful work of shifting the lens and the future of education, I've been supported by Commissioner Glass, Tony Tatnam, and the rest of the communications team since before the sabbatical began, guided in how best to demonstrate the best of Kentucky, guided in doing the hard work for our students, and guided in consistently demonstrating hope for a better, stronger Kentucky. They do their work, as have I, with the support of this board. And for that, I want to tell you that I'm extremely grateful as a teacher, proud as a Kentuckian, and hopeful. Thank you.
Willie, thank you. I'll never forget coming to your house in September with balloons and an oversized check and getting to meet you and your husband and being in your front yard. I know this year has taken you to different places that you expected to go, including Space Camp in July in Alabama. Doing physics for Space Camp would have reduced me to tears as well, I would have to add. But thank you for your service. Thank you for this past year. All the twists and turns, but through all of it, you told stories. You elevated the voices and the experiences of Kentucky teachers, especially those from Appalachia, and the fact that you consistently spoke about your students and kept them at the center of all of your interactions, I think was particularly admirable. And we appreciate you. That's the spirit of this award, is that we have folks who tell the story, even when it's a hard story to tell. And we really appreciate that about you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please. One more second, Willie.
Willie, I've told you many times I've never seen a Teacher of the Year do as much with this year as you have. You have redefined really what a Teacher of the Year is able to accomplish, and so I think it breaks the mold and it sets a new expectation for everyone who follows you about what you can accomplish with this year. I'm excited about that, but I'm even more excited about what's ahead for you. That you have an incredible future ahead of you, going to continue to make so much impact here in Kentucky and across this country. So we're fans. So keep going.
Thank you.
Presentation, I didn't see it in the notes.
Yes, Meredith, can we post a copy of Willie's presentation in the portal? Thank you.
And is there a video clip of this presentation as well?
The script.
Of today?
Of today, just what he said right there.
Yeah, I think we can get that for you too.
Yeah.
Yes, she's recording for today as well. All right, thank you so much. At this point, as always, included on today's board agenda is dedicated public comment segment. This segment is limited to 10 speakers at a maximum of 3 minutes each. And with us today is a friend of this board, Mr. Donnie Wilkerson, who just drove the short distance today from Jamestown. And he's here with us to share some remarks to the board today. So Mr. Wilkerson, if you would please come on up. Just learned today he's a former mayor of Jamestown. Very appropriate as we are in his neck of the woods today. So Donnie, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Chair Young and Commissioner Glass and the entire board, and it's a pleasure. And I came here primarily today to welcome you as you're leaving
Thank you.
to Jamestown and this wonderful facility. We are blessed to have Lake Cumberland State Park here, and I know you've been treated well. I also came to talk a little bit about assessment and standards, but having heard the remarks just made by this outstanding young man, I am so moved by what he said, and to be such a great ambassador for our state. It speaks volumes. I just am literally moved to tears. So I appreciate him so much. And he talked about sitting beside. And you know, when we talk about assessment, you might want to check out the word assessment. It comes from the Latin essidere, and I don't know if I pronounced that correctly since it's Latin, but it literally means to sit beside. So I think if we think about that in terms of all the discussions we have, I happen to be a strong advocate for direct instruction and content knowledge-based, and we'll have that conversation, and I'll send you those remarks that I had prepared. But I think it's more important today that we focus on the communication that took place here. Also, given this current environment of Senate Bill 1, which I applaud you all for joining me in being vociferously opposed to, that limits what can be said and talked about in the classroom. We simply cannot allow that to happen in this state, and I think Willie does a great job of talking about that. So that is why I'm here today, to welcome you. I hope your stay's been nice. Maybe you can stick around this afternoon and enjoy this beautiful weather here in Jamestown. I know I traveled to Frankfurt to talk to you there, so I very least I could do was come speak to you here. So thank you all so much.
Excellent. Thank you for being here. We are once again doing well on time, and I would just add, I'm a big fan, Meredith, of the new format. I think that even though I wasn't able to join you yesterday, you guys seem to be rested, ready to re-engage in another vigorous morning, and so really appreciate this, and I hope this turns out to be a grand experiment as we move forward. So thank you for that. I wanted to open up. I know several board members had some things that they've been engaged in over the summer that perhaps you would like to share. So anybody have anything? This is so unlike us.
Yeah. I know that there's another opening on the Whole Child Committee.
Oh,
so
yes, that's right. Thinking about NASB, Mrs. Batt had been a member of the Whole Child Committee, and they did ask for a replacement. We put that word out last time and didn't have any takers, but if you, I feel like we could still get someone engaged. So if you would be interested in that, or
well,
you're already a member.
I'm on that
right,
one.
Right, with Claire.
So there was a second
vacancy.
Vacancy.
Okay, so if you would be interested in that work, just let me or Meredith know.
It's very informative, very, it's a subcommittee of the board. It's held the day before. Typically, our board meeting goes in session, and you get a broad picture of how our children are being just the wraparound services that are in play. It's very informative.
I think so too. I would share that I was able to attend the Education Commission of the States along with Sarah and Matthew and Meredith and Amanda and Jennifer from CPE. And in that session, we were able to really focus in a lot on whole child. It was interesting at the national level that there was a big conversation around Portrait of a Learner as well. So a lot of these things nationally begin to bubble up in such a way that they inform us as we think about our work moving forward. So that was in June, in July in DC, also a really good event. I was happy to be able to participate.
So,
Holly.
So your meetings, is it all day?
No, they're virtual, and they're 2 to 3 hours.
Like in the middle of, I just have to look at my class schedule. I'm interested if
Okay.
it lines up with the classes that I teach.
Okay, let's see if we can get from Megan Blanco what that schedule might look like for Holly to consider.
We can do that. We do that, have that formally on the agenda for October to
Oh, it is
appoint
on
new
the,
members.
okay,
Yeah.
good, all
The
right.
next meeting's not until October. It typically starts around 12 o'clock.
All right, we'll check on that tentative schedule.
The real time.
Excellent.
God's time.
Slow time, God's time, who knows what time it is. All right. All right, I think that was a pretty quick finish. Thank you, everyone, for yesterday, your engagement with Dr. Glass and Dr. Porter Robinson around the retreat work. I think very productive, really lifted our eyes toward the future of learning and what's on the horizon for us as a state and as a board team. And thanks for the time and meeting today to take care of some business. Having said that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Ms. McCrary, do I have a second?
Second.
Our Dr. Todd whisper second on the other side there. All those in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Great job, Jude. Great job, Joanna. All right, thanks.